Hello, welcome to a video, a vlog, a thing that I'm excited to be doing. I'm rereading one of my favourite books ever. It's Ruin of Kings by Jenn Lyons. Did you know? Did you know this is one of my favourite books ever? You do now. I love this book series a whole lot, and I am doing a reread of it. I'm doing a read along with my patrons, and I have decided I'm gonna be doing completely spoiler-filled vlogs for each of the books as we go. So this vlog will be full of spoilers. Obviously it is a reread, so I know that this is a 5-star book for me. I know how much I love it. But as I'm rereading, I am tabbing, I am annotating and highlighting. So what I'm going to be doing in this vlog is every 50 pages or so, we are going to have a sit down, we are going to have a breakdown of what's happened in those last 50 pages, the characters we've met, what's happened with the plot, where we're going, what's up, how we're feeling. If you are unfamiliar with Ruin of Kings or the Cross of Dragons series, let me tell you a little bit about it before we get into the spoilery vlog. This is a series about a boy named Kieran. And Kieran is the centre of this big prophecy. He grew up as a bard's apprentice in a whorehouse. He grew up on heroic tales, and he grew up as a little bit of a thief, until one day when he raids the wrong house and is marked by a demon. This slingshots him into a whole nother world, and his misfortune attracts the attention of a royal house. And this royal house then claim Kieran as their own. He is their long-lost immortal heir. So he is claimed by their family, brought into their household, and far from living a life of luxury, he discovers that he is at the centre of this enormous prophecy, which has him being pulled left, right and centre. He is wanted by the royals, he is wanted by dragons, he's wanted by demons, he's wanted by gods, he is wanted by absolutely everybody, because he is pivotal to this prophecy. Except this prophecy doesn't necessarily specify if Kieran is destined to save the Empire or destroy it. Dun dun dun. It gets so confusing. It's so just well built. There's so much to this. We have, as I say, we've got dragons, we've got demons, we've got gods, we've got assassins, we've got this like secret society people, we've got the royal houses, we've got a very interesting character called Talon, who we meet at the very beginning, who is a shape-shifting monster who eats people. And of course we've got Kieran, who is just the sweetest little bean, and I love him. So that's roughly what the book is about. But as you can see, I have started my reread, and I am 52 pages in currently, which means it is time for a rundown of what has happened so far, who we've met, what's going on. So if you don't want spoilers, go and read the book now. Because from this point on, this vlog is spoiler, spoiler, spoiler. Let's get into the spoilers. Okie dokie. So, we start off knowing that Kieran has been jailed. He is jailed, and he is with Talon. Although, before that, we have the introduction from Thurvashar. So we know that Thurvashar Dolores is the narrator of this. So we know that Thurvashar survives the events of this book. We know that Thurvashar is the person who is reporting on all of this to the Emperor. And it tells us straight at the beginning, two of the most pivotal individuals in the story, Talon and Kieran. So we know they're important. A dialogue between a jailer and the prisoner. So we have the dialogue between Kieran and Talon. And they tell us immediately that she is a monster who doesn't look like a monster, but she can shape her body into forms crafted from pure terror. She mocks her victims with the forms of murdered loved ones before they become her next meal. Because she's vicious. She's insane, and we know this from the very beginning. And this introduction shows us that Kieran has been jailed. He's in jail being guarded by Talon, and we know that his brother is going to come back to murder him. Or sacrifice him to a demon. That's how they're planning on murdering Kieran when they come back. His brother and a mysterious they, who have their schemes, are going to come back and murder Kieran by sacrificing him to a demon. We also just have some more insanity from Talon. She threatens to murder Kieran's mother and come back wearing your mother's skin cinched by a belt of your father's intestines. Grim. And then she gives him the magic rock to tell the story. We've got Kieran starting the story at a slave auction where we learn that he was a musician with golden hair and blue eyes, which is important. So at this slave auction, we discover that he has been geished. A part of his soul has been attached to this trinket, and that is a geish. So whoever holds the geish, that piece of his soul, controls him. And then this is where we initially meet Relos Var, who is a very powerful wizard. We don't know too much about him, but we know that Relos Var is very powerful. Kieran tells us that he can see magic. We learn a little bit about his connection to the First Veil and a little bit about the goddesses and how we've got the goddess of life, magic and death. So we've got Tarja, Taya and Thane, who are the trio of like the most important goddesses that we know about. Relos and the Black Brotherhood get into a bidding war. So we initially see the three-seated figures in their black robes. They bid an awful lot of money, and Kieran is saying, like, I'm not worth that money unless they know something, unless they know ultimately what he holds, his Sali Stone. So he holds the Stone of Shackles. We haven't been told what the Stone of Shackles is at this point, but he holds it, he knows it's very valuable. Do the Black Brotherhood and Relos Var know that he holds that, and is that why they want him? We don't know. Then we swap into Talon's story, and Talon basically says that Kieran isn't telling the story from the beginning, so she's going to start back from even further when he was a young child and a thief, and how he came to get to the situation of being at the Slavers' Block. So we then have the two timelines of Kieran's life, but the earlier story being told by Talon. And we have some names sprinkled in that I've highlighted as I know that they're important for later. Like we have Queen Cariel and her serving girl, Maeathriel, and we have a couple of characters who are after the Stone of Shackles, but Kieran doesn't really know what he holds at this point. And then he finds another Sali Stone, and he is spotted by these characters who are murdering a Varney, and then a demon is summoned, and I think that's where the demon marks him as like wanting him. The demon has seen into his soul, sees that he has the Stone of Shackles, which is what they want. We're then back in Kieran's story where we discover that one of the Black Brotherhood is Teraith. Teraith is a very important character. I have circled him, put a little heart next to him. We love Teraith. Very important. And then we also have a little bit of Teraith's family. So we know that Teraith's father is Terendel and his mother is Kemezra. Important when we're putting the full family tree together. We also have some other names sprinkled in there. We have a Thanriel mentioned, which is the god-slaying sword. We have Kieran at one point mentioning this Relos Var fellow seemed very much like the lesser evil, which is hilarious. And then we have a little bit more about Thane's disciples, because the Black Brotherhood are Thane's disciples, Thane being the goddess of death. So they worship the goddess of death. They mention Relos Var wants you dead. You being near us puts us in danger. And the banter between Kieran and Teraith begins. We're then back again to Kieran trying to sell the things that he's stolen from the house where he was marked by the demon. We get a little bit more about his childhood, being adopted by a blind musician named Sergia, who performs at a whorehouse, and then he does some fighting. They find out that it's a Sali Stone that he's stolen. We don't know which one. It's a magical Varney gem. They want it for a lot of money. And then Butterbelly, who is the person he's trying to sell this gem to, mentions, oh, what about me buying the one that you're wearing as well, which Kieran typically hides, and he masks that he's got it, but Butterbelly knows that he's got it. And he mentioned, the one that you're wearing is old, come on, some trinket from a mama who ditched you can't be worth more than getting out of this hellhole. So we know that he got the Stone of Shackles, the Sully Stone that he wears, from his mother who ditched him. That seems important for future, doesn't it? Again, we've got some little names dropped, but we don't have context of them yet. But we've got Sules mentioned, who is the goddess of treachery, so we've got some more sneaks into like some goddesses that will pop up later, most likely. And then he moans about how he worships Taja, who is the magic goddess and is supposed to give him luck, but he doesn't have an awful lot of luck. Then we have a comment from Kieran about the idea that Thurvashar Dolores is probably dead, which fills him with grief, even though he was responsible for my present predicament. And we know that Thurvashar is the narrator, so we know that Thurvashar somehow is important to how Kieran has got in the situation that he's in, but Thurvashar rejects the idea that he's responsible. He is at best an accessory, because in the footnotes we've got Thurvashar like commenting on the story as it goes. So I feel like we're getting a lot of context, we're getting a lot of like little hints dropped in. It's interesting to go back to look at like how many names are dropped so early that at the time you don't realise are important, you don't realise they are what they are. You think, oh, this is just a little bit of world building, like mentioning names from history here and there, but they're important. So I am now 112 pages into The Ruin of Kings, so let's have a rundown of everything that's happened since. Beginning of chapter 6, we find out that Talon has killed Kieran's adoptive father. She says, Serge is part of my memory collection. Oh, you didn't know? Serge is an active part of me. So she has killed and eaten Kieran's father, so we know that that is to come, because she has admitted to him being a part of her. And then we also know that when Sergio was alive, in the past tense story, that he's protecting Kieran from something. He says, I protect you more than you know, more than you can imagine, and Kieran is kind of starting to work out that the life that they're living isn't as simple as he once thought it was. One of the dancing girls comments about how great a musician he is, and he could do so much better than the whorehouse that he works in, and Kieran is working out that, like, we could do more, but you're keeping us here for a reason. He knows it's a lie. We also then have a lot of foreshadowing about Kieran's actual family. So we have mention of his blue eyes a lot, and he has a nickname of Bright Eyes from Ola. And Moria, the dancing girl, comments on his blue eyes, and she is convinced that he is no farmer's brood. He's dressed in blue with blue eyes, wearing his colours. Who is he? And she asks him if he is a genre being the bastard children of the royal houses. So there's kind of a hint that that could be what he is, and maybe he doesn't know it. He could be one of the god-touched, looks just like the person who took Moria's sister, Talia, wearing his colours. We, at that point, don't know who took Talia. We find out, obviously, but currently we don't know who took Talia. Even Sergia says, I've got this bit underlined, you think he was a royal prince. The slave girls you let him take his pick from. So, because Sergio obviously knows the truth. Anyway, from Kieran's story, he's obviously with Teraith and Kemezra, and he has survived disobeying a Geisha order, which should kill him. And they discover that it is the Stone of Shackles, and it is explained to Kieran how the Stone of Shackles is responsible for Geishing. Like, it is what gives the power for Geishing. We also have some more reference to Maya, Lady Maya, who we will meet at a later date, and the history of Lady Maya and her relation to Kemezra. And we have the story of how the Star Tears ended up in the possession that they ended up in. They originated from the Dragon Hoard of Balosh, stolen by the Emperor. Centuries later, a different emperor gave the necklace to a different courtesan who used the jewels to buy her freedom, and the former owner, a man named Theron, was off having adventures with his friends. He used the necklace to save the life of a Varney woman who was about to be executed. He traded the necklace for ownership of the woman's geis and his vow that she would never return to the manor. Important future information, because that would be Maya. However, why was she going to be executed? What was the traitor's walk that she was going to do? I feel like that's going to be important. And then, yeah, we have the explanation of Maya's relation. And then we have our first mention of the cornerstones. Kieran thinks that the Stone of Shackles is a Sali stone, but it's actually one of 8 cornerstones meant to usurp one of the 8 gods. So we have mention of the 8 gods and the connection to the cornerstones there. Gonna be important later. But we now know that the Stone of Shackles is protecting the wearer, which is Kieran. We then also have Darzin's name dropped in there, and we have the first mention of a prophecy. There is a prophecy. I stare back at her. Kamezra stares back. I don't believe in prophecy. Neither do I. Unfortunately, Relos Var seems to take these prophecies seriously. So we know that the motivation for what Relos Var is doing is a prophecy. And we know from the blurb that Kieran is the centre of this prophecy, so that's why he's so desperately after him. We then discover that Darzin Damon is Pretty Boy. Pretty Boy is the one that summoned the demon. And then we go back to Talon's POV, so we're back with young Kieran and Serja, and we have the run-in with the demon. The demon's stomach. This was, yes, very action-packed here. We have Pretty Boy, who back in that timeline, he didn't know was Darzin Damon, but now we as a reader know that that's Darzin. Pretty Boy sent this demon after him, and we know that this demon is Zautarath. Zautarath is our big bad demon. We have met the big bad demon. I am Zautarath, I am the rage of battle, the sin of lust, I am the moan of the lips of the damned. And he has that run-in. And the speech that the demon gives, our narrator compares to a prophecy from a study of demonic possession. So it seems like the demons have their own prophecy that involves Kieran. And then we have mention of the daughter of the general that has been taken by this demon as well, which I have marked as foreshadowing because I know it is. We then know that the general that is part of that run-in with that demon, the general and the captain, we have Captain Jareth and General Milagreast, who will come to be important characters for us. Again, there's names dropped in here a lot that I have underlined and highlighted and stuff. Like we've got Grist, who created the binding for the demons. We've got Atron Kandor and the way of life that he saved. More names that I know will be important. And then we also have mention of Tienso. Tienso is a sea witch, but Tienso is, again, important at a later date. So there's lots of things that I'm highlighting at this point that's foreshadowing, but if you're at this point in the book, you wouldn't know. We have Kieran acknowledging that the demon is after him, and Pretty Boy Darzin Damon is after him, and the thought that the demon murdered one of General Milagreast's daughters. And then we have the discussion of the thoughts and the way that the demon could get in his head and give him memories that weren't his and make him feel like a demon himself. And then we have our first mention of, except there was a girl. She looked so strange, I don't think she was human. She had red hair. Her hair was either black or the colour of blood, depending on the angle, and she only had a single stripe of it running from her forehead to her neck. Her eyes were fire, all flickering red and orange, and her skin was odd. And this dream girl, or the girl that the demon put the image of in Kieran's head, comes again to be a recurring theme. And then Kieran reads his fortune on some fate cards, and it comes out with death, loss, pain, suffering, slavery, and despair, ending with the cold void of hell, which is pretty accurate to what happens with the rest of Kieran's life. So, yay. Chapter 13 is where we start getting more of a view into Tienso, and Tienso is another character that we need to keep an eye on. So we're back aboard the Misery, And we are seeing that Tienzo is the sort of person who could order the death of anyone who displeased her. But Kieran likes her. She kind of protected him whilst he was on there, but the illusion that is on Kemezra, Teraith, and Kieran doesn't work on Tienzo because Tienzo is a witch. So she recognises them, blows their cover a little bit, and then they get attacked by a kraken. Kraken being a daughter of Laker, not any mortal being, it is a kraken that has been sent to kill them. As they are fighting this kraken, they come to the realisation that the daughter of Laker is chasing Kieran. It has been sent after Kieran. We discover that Relosvar has summoned this kraken, or they assume Relosvar has summoned this kraken to hunt down Kieran because he wants Kieran, but he hasn't just summoned one kraken, he summoned a kraken for every ship that left because he didn't know which one Kieran was on. The kraken is after them. We also have a little bit of a question about who Tienzo's late husband is. Why would Relosvar go to visit Tienzo and her late husband? So I've highlighted that for future importance probably. And then we also have mention of the Concord. This is our first mention of the Concord, which is the Celestial Concord, the binding agreement between the 8 immortals and certain god kings. So we are aware that there was chaos before the time of the Concord, and they don't want to return to that. We have a hint that Tienzo is maybe a bit more powerful than your average witch. And we have Kieran being a sassy little bastard, because that is what he is. We're then back in Talon's perspective, telling a story. We've got Talon telling the story from Ola's perspective, so we know that Talon has consumed Ola as well. Ola is trying to prevent young Kieran from going to see General Milagreast, and she tells him a story, and Mori is there as well. And Kieran persuades Ola to tell one of the outlandish stories about how he's a long-lost prince, but it's just a story. But that story does give us some insight into how the Emperor of Kur is found, and there is a battle to the death for who becomes Emperor when an Emperor does die. The only way to kill the Emperor is by murder, he can die in no other way. There is a contest of blood to determine the next Emperor, so we have a little insight into this, and this is the story of how Sandus became the current Emperor. So Sandus is the Emperor currently. We have the story about how Ola found baby Kieran. It's an entirely made up story, just a story, a tale. The truth is that he was found on a garbage heap. It was just a story. Ola, whilst telling this story, tries to poison Kieran so that he will not go to General Milagreast. She tries to rope Moria into this and persuade her that it's the best thing for it, but Moria has already been persuaded by Kieran that they're going to pull the wool over Ola's eyes. He's going to pretend to be drugged because he knew that was what she was going to do, and Moria's going to help him pull this over her. We also have Ola whispering that she made a mistake, so there is some conflict going on in Ola's mind there, and we have some more hinting about why Kieran can't go and see the Milagreasts. And then we have him being a sneaky boy and going out anyway because he wasn't actually drugged. Then we're back on the misery, back with the Kraken, and they wake up a dragon. Kemezra says there are worse things in this water than the Kraken. There is the Old Man. What is the Old Man? The Old Man is a dragon. Kemezra also mentions, I've got this squiggle underlined, you may not have mastered all of the skills that are your birthright. So, what skills are Kieran's birthright? So again, they come to the conclusion that Relosvar summoned this Kraken, but there are worse things in the water, and I've jumped ahead a little bit. It was a gods-be-damned dragon. The Old Man was a dragon. Wings, when spread, seemed like they might black out all the sky. The dragon stared directly at me. The dragon was singing. So Kieran is singing to this dragon. Why is that important to the dragon? And the dragon wants Kieran. The dragon speaks and says, I want him, give him to me, and I will save you. I won't hurt him, mother. Mother directed at Kemezra. What is Kemezra? Because the mother of a being of that sort of power can only be a goddess. The Krakens are the daughters of goddesses. So to be the child For a dragon to be the child of someone would make them a goddess. So what is Camesra? And then another dragon appears. A gigantic black dragon. But the eyes were not the yellow gold of the old man, but blue. Or maybe no colour at all, except by reflection. I've got that down as foreshadowing there as well. So, we've met the dragons, or the first couple of dragons. There's more. And I think that is, it's important for us to recognise the initial interaction between Kirin and these dragons, because, as I know at this point, the dragon's relationship with Kirin is important. I've also highlighted our first mention of Valothea, the harp, because I know that comes into play again later. We don't have any context at this point of what Valothea is, other than a harp. Like, it felt strange to sing without the harp Valothea to accompany me. But I know that that's important at a later point. We've also got our narrator saying that Kirin was never fully licensed to use magic, which makes him a witch. Fun fact. And we've got a little bit of mention of the royal houses and the colours that they are, and how Moria assumes that Kirin is a relation of the blue-eyed noble house. But Kirin can't remember who they are. The demons. It's the demons. Chapter 18, what Jareth found. What did Jareth find? Turns out Jareth found a Kirin. Kirin goes to the Milagreast household, meets the daughter of General Milagreast, who says, "Did you know we're descended from Emperor Atron Candor?" A name that I have highlighted and tabbed as being important. Who is Atron Candor? Why is he important? Why is it important that you are descendants of him? Is it just because he's the emperor? And then I have my first love this tab in, where we have the title of the book, which is describing a painting where Athenriel, the ruin of kings, is being held because Athenriel has the power to kill the gods. We then have Kirin finding out that Jareth is a Milagreast as well, and then we have the reveal that the Milagreast and Demon households are related, and that Darzin is Jareth's cousin, and it's not a good relationship. Then we have Kirin's dream, and this dream chapter, chapter 19, Dream of a Goddess, this dream has so much foreshadowing in it. Like, there's a few tabs in here, but I could have just tabbed and highlighted the whole chapter, to be honest. But Kirin tells us he hasn't been able to dream since he's been engaged, so it couldn't have been a dream. But it was a dream of a goddess. A girl wading through the foam at a beach, and the young girl is Tarja. She says to him, "It's been a long time for you, and you don't remember. Important to know." And he says, "Who are you?" She says, "You already know who I am." Kirin needed no qualifiers with his goddess. So he knows that it's the goddess, but he is not going to remember a lot of what she's talking about. She explains to him there is a war, a very old war, with the demons, and he is confused by the history that he knows, because he thought that the demons had been banished and that the gods had won that war, but then remembers Zaltaroth has been summoned and is out and about again. So the goddess tells him, "No, we didn't win." Kirin wants to know how he's involved in this. Why is he important to this war? And Tarja says to him, "You volunteered." He doesn't remember this. She says, "Of course you don't remember this. You hadn't been born yet." So he had volunteered to help win this war for the gods before he had been born. So this is our first real, stating of reincarnation, rebirth, being returned from the dead. That is very clearly what that is hinting at for us here. So this is Tarja's first way of saying to him, in a previous life, you volunteered to help win this war. And then I've highlighted a quote that I quite liked. "A hero who has never had a bad thing happen to him isn't a hero, he's just spoiled," because Kirin is going on about how unfair everything is. And Kirin being classic Kirin, being like, "Oh, what, so I should just stop whining?" Yes, you should. What right do people have to want me dead? You're on the verge of telling me how unfair this is. It is. He questions why Tarja, as a goddess, can't help him here against Relosvar, and she says, "He's the high priest of the one being in the universe who makes me wake up screaming from night terrors, so it all evens out." What is that about? She also says we're running out of sacrifices, which is another little piece of foreshadowing. What sacrifices have been made already, and how are they running out of sacrifices? And she says to him, don't worry, Kieran, I won't leave you. There's a lot packed into that chapter with little hints of, like, the war to come, the war that's been, the lives that have been, the lives that are yet to come. We then have Valencia. So this is the harp. The harp is important. So Kieran goes to the Milagreast household, as we know, and he meets the Lord Heir, Darzan Damon, pretty boy who was not supposed to be there, and, like, freaks out. Realises that Darzan is royalty from House Damon, realises that he should probably be kind of scared. Darzan plays dumb. Or we think he plays dumb, because Kieran thinks that Darzan's the one that summoned Zaltaroth to kill him, but he's playing dumb, so Kieran thinks, well, maybe Darzan hadn't done this? But he knew that Darzan has a thing for killing people and summoning demons and so on. And then Darzan starts to take an interest in him. Darzan notices his uncanny ability to stealthily leave a room. Darzan realises that he has blue eyes. Darzan realises that he is one of ours. You found one of our house's lost scions. Milagreast doesn't want to, like, just offer him up to Darzan because the Emperor is interested in that boy. The Emperor is the reason that General Milagreast is offering a harp up to Kieran. And Kieran's harp of choice ends up being the prize of the Milagreast's collection of harps in Valencia. Valencia translates to the exquisite sorrow that comes from understanding great truths. So there is some foreshadowing involved with Valencia's name and what Valencia represents. Valencia only plays brightly for those she loves. Then we're back with Kieran on this island where he realises that he has got away from a kraken, defeated a dragon, feeling pretty immortal, feeling pretty badass, and realises that his geisha isn't stopping him the way that it used to. He can think about escape, whereas before that would have killed him. And he remembers Kemezra's words, I've removed the previous prohibitions from the geisha, and Taja's words, you can walk away if you want. So he is starting to think that he may have a little bit more freedom. Swap back to Talon's point of view, the Golden Hawk. Kieran tells Moria that he has met Darzan Damon and he is scared and he is in danger. He needs to go and tell Ola that he's seen a golden hawk. And Moria says, why would you use golden hawk as a code word that is the symbol of the House Damon? And Kieran's like, oh, Ola, you knew. Ola, how could you? I've been set up. Then he goes back to Butterbelly, the guy who he used to sell things to when he was a thief, to realise that Butterbelly has been murdered and the Emerald Sally Stone has been taken. It is missing. Then back to Kieran's POV, and he is back on this island again. We go with him as he realises that there's some sort of religious ritual going on or something, and this could be an opportunity to escape, but maybe his curiosity is going to get the best of him. He follows to this temple, realises that it's all very snaky themed, and sees the statue of Thane, the Pale Lady, the Queen of the Underworld, the Goddess of Death. Teraith produces a black dagger with a wavy blade. So Teraith is at the altar of this ritual. Kemezra has let him kind of start doing this ritual dancing. He is dancing with this blade, and at the end of his dance, he brings the blade down into his own heart and kills himself. Kieran freaks out. Back to Talon's story. We meet Talon. We meet Talon in Talon's story. I feel like so much has happened in this 50 pages here. Kieran runs into Ola and says, I've met Darzan Damon. Ola turned grey. It's not what you think. Oh my god, Ola freaks out. Blah, 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 blah. He goes into a room to try and find Moria and Serja, finds their dead bodies in a bed, laid out, meticulously posed, hands crossed over their hearts, eyes closed as if sleeping. It only made their slit throats more obvious. I've immediately tabbed this as Talon because I knew it was Talon. He didn't know this at this point until, like, a couple pages later when he realises those men that he's just been attacked by didn't do this because they had arrows, not a sharp weapon to slit a throat with. And then he sees a woman lay on top of Ola's glass table, breasts and hips pressed against the glass, her arms draped over the sides, black belts that provide no protection or modesty, no weapons he could see, and he could see nearly all of her. She might have been stunning if not for the madness in her dark eyes, because she is mad. And then he realizes, like, she's not a patron, she's not here for sex, and she reveals that she can read his mind and says, "How right you are, my pretty angel." And then she calls him Bright Eyes, which is using Ola's words, which is important to remember. And then she reveals that she is not a demon. She uses the nickname Ducky for the first time, and I just love when she calls him Ducky. And she's just, like, insane. She is insane because she's got so many, like, voices in her head. She says, like, "Oh, you've done so well. Like, most people run screaming when they see their loved ones dead with their throat slits. But look at you. You're so great. Love you. You're awesome. Now I'm gonna kill you. I'm planning on having a blind musician and a dancing girl for dinner. Don't worry, I've saved you for dessert. You look tasty." She says she's gonna kill him and eat him. "Hi, I'm Talon. I'll be your murderer tonight." I just love the way she talks. It's amazing. He discovers that she's a mimic. He works out that she's a mimic. She reveals that she can change her form and presents the, like, mirror image of him back. But it's not a perfect one because true mastery of your form will come after snack time. Then we find out that the Ola that Kieran saw was in fact Talon. So Ola does not know that there is danger. Ola does not know that he has seen Darzin Damon. Then we find out that it wasn't Darzin that sent Talon, but we thought it was Darzin that sent Talon. She then works out that she has seen Kieran before. She knows who Kieran is. Talon says, "She kept you? Ola kept you here? What a crafty little cunt." What a title. And then she says, "You have the necklace, the Stone of Shackles. Oh, never mind the name. You probably don't have a clue what it is anyway. To you, it's just a blue stone. It would have been with you when Ola found you in Arena Park." And Ola finding him in Arena Park is the story that she told to Moria and Kieran. The, like, false make-believe story of him being a long-lost prince that she found when the, like, Emperor's blood battle thing was happening. Kieran doesn't think that's true. Turns out it just about might be. Then Talon realizes, "Oh, and to think I was just about to kill you. To think I almost made the same mistake my murderer did. Trust me, never kill the person who's wearing the Stone of Shackles. Disaster every time." So we've got there, almost made the same mistake my murderer did. So we know that Talon, or whoever Talon is at that point, has been murdered before, because we know that Talon eats people and has the memories of people that she eats. So she has been murdered in one of these previous bodies that she's had. She's been murdered before. She says, "Oh, my darling, I have so much to tell you. I found you at last." Who is Talon at that point? Because you'd think, like, this is someone who knew Kieran as a baby that Talon has eaten. So Talon is getting those, like, almost maternal instincts from the person inside of her at that point. Even though Kieran was the one who had been shot, his attacker was the one screaming. Darzin Damon arrived just in time. And Talon says, "I had no idea." And Darzin said, "It's not your fault, Talon. I won't blame you if he dies." He won't die. I'm not finished with him yet. Darzin and Talon are working together, but Talon didn't know who Kieran was. Talon was not sent by Darzin, but it's all wound up that they're all there together at the same time. Then we're back on the island with future Kieran being chased by snakes, using the same language that Comedra has used after he's just freaked out after Teraith killing himself. He's then been running around trying to escape, being chased by these snaky creatures, and then Kalindra comes out and kind of saves him from these snakes, can speak the language of the snake creatures. And Kalindra has a little bit of a chat with him and lets him know that he's just seen the Mavenos, one of Thene's most sacred rituals, to ask for her forgiveness and blessing in her own realm, where her power is absolute and no dissemblance is possible. If a petitioner is truly sorry, she returns them. They are purified and made free of sin. So the ritual that Kieran has just seen is Teraith doing this Mavenos ritual, where he kills himself to go into the Goddess of Death's realm to rid himself of his sins, to be returned pure. But Kieran doesn't entirely believe this, and he says, "Oh, what a shame, I was really starting to like Teraith." Kalindra says, "Really?" He says, "No, of course not, he's an arse." I love their banter. But Kalindra says there's plenty of time for explanations before Jadeyraereads returns from the dead, and that's where I'm at now. So I'm on page 204. I feel like we are getting places, and we're possibly at places where like more answers will start coming through if you're on your first read. I think from here is where you will start to understand things a little bit more about like who Kieran is and stuff. But I have just been loving seeing all of the foreshadowing and everything. Like, these tabs are just so satisfying to me. This video is going to be so long, I'm so sorry. I'm on page 254 now. We landed on unhappy reunion, so we had just had Jadeyraereads kill himself. And then we're back in Talon's perspective. So we have Talon and Ola. Like, Talon has discovered that she knows Ola and knows who Ola is. Then we find out that Ola knows Talon as Larilyn. Larilyn is a name that is important to us. So Talon is Larilyn. And it kind of explains to us the purpose of the Stone of Shackles. So Larilyn, when she was Larilyn back in the day when Ola knew her, was wearing the Stone of Shackles when she was murdered by a mimic. What that does is puts Larilyn in the body of the mimic. So Larilyn is now the mimic that we know as Talon. And we find out why she's so crazy, because she had to suddenly absorb 5,372 separate and distinct lifetimes in a matter of minutes. It's bound to put a little fuzz around the edges of any person's mental faculties. That's why Talon is so crazy. And then Ola's like, oh my god, you've killed that many people? Talon says, no, not me, I can only account for 741 of them. So, since Larilyn has been the mimic Talon, she's killed 741 people. So we know that Talon has Larilyn in her and has killed that many people, and why she's so crazy. So it explains the Stone of Shackles. How lucky was that? So when the mimic murdered me, I swapped bodies with my killer, which makes me the mimic. There's some little bits of messaging with why Larilyn is important. And Larilyn says to Ola, you had one job. Who thought you would actually leave Kieran in this shithole? So Larilyn knew that Ola had taken Kieran and didn't want him left there. And Talon, Larilyn, is now mad that Ola has put Kieran in this position. And we also find out that although Talon is working for Darzan, he has no idea that she used to be Larilyn, which we find out is important in a little bit. And then we also have some discussion about like why Serja was important. Like, why was Serja playing this game? Serja was a more powerful wizard than we thought he was. He put a spell on Ola to trust him. What game was he playing and who holds his leash? Is it the old Emperor Gendel? And then I've just made a little note of how much I adore Talon. Right, then we're back to Kieran's perspective. We have some foreshadowing around the bodies of the gods. Divinities have physical bodies. Those physical bodies still exist in the land of the living. Avatars walk and talk and do all the things that living beings do. Most people will never meet the avatar of a god, or if they do, they'll remain blissfully ignorant of that fact. So we have been told that the gods could be walking amongst them, which is important for us. Then we have discussion of the prophecy. The prophecy that the whole book is based around. Kalindra says to Kieran, there's a prophecy. No, really, stop laughing. And then we discuss a little bit about that, and then there is some sexual tension between Kieran and Kalindra, which I forgot happened, but because of the images that Zaltaroth has put in Kieran's brain, he cannot act on that because he is disgusted by himself. Back to Talon's story. Kieran wakes up in the Damon household. Everything's blue. Blue silk, blue flowers, sapphire crystals. There was only one nobleman obsessed with blue. It's the Damons. He has been healed by the Damons and is told, your real father is here and alive. Whether you were told you were abandoned or adopted, I don't know. The truth is, you were stolen. Was he, though? Was he? And then Kieran realises that Serja and Ola had known that he is in a Jadeyraered. He now knows that Ola and Serja knew that and were hiding it from him. We go back to Kieran's story. And we have Teraith's return, and Teraith comes back from the dead. We also, I have highlighted here, some very queer normative behaviour, which I love. This series is very queer. Like, there is lots of queer relationships in this, and this is where the, like, queer normative behaviour really comes in, where Kieran says, "No one seemed to care here, or hell even notice," with the after party of this religious ordeal basically being everyone having sex with everyone. It's just what they do. And Kieran notices that whether it be males and females, females and females, males and males, snakes, whatever, like, anything goes, and that's completely normal and accepted and not even picked up upon. So I like that. I had to highlight that. Then we have him saying, "He was so pretty, I wanted to hit him." So you do think he's pretty. And then Teraith explains that he has a wife. So Kieran and Teraith are having a conversation. Kieran says, "Oh, you've got the look of a lovesick puppy," and he says, "I was thinking about my wife." Kieran says, "Wait, you're married?" Teraith says, "Not now. I was married in my last life. Yes, I know, no one's supposed to remember their previous life after they're reborn. I just got lucky that way." So we know that Teraith has been reborn and he remembers another life, another soul, another person that he used to be. Which is important to know that that is a capability in this world. We then have more talk of the prophecy. Teraith kind of explains what the prophecy is: a hell warrior conquering the Manor, killing the Emperor, destroying the Empire of Kerr and freeing the demons. In his right hand he'll hold Ephaniel, in the left he will crush the world and remake it as he desires. So we know what the prophecy is all about, but is that a prophecy of saving the Empire or destroying it, really? Sounds like it could be destroying it and freeing the demons and stuff. Like, that doesn't sound like something you want to be part of. Then Teraith makes a move on Kieran. I just love that. Teraith makes a move on Kieran and is like, I owe you an apology. Let me make it up to you. I promise I can be very considerate. But Kieran is not ready. I'm embarrassed. I'm not ready. Not with Teraith. Especially not with Teraith. And then he says, "It's not you, it's..." Because Kieran is attracted to Teraith, clearly. But he didn't want to have to explain the images that Zaltaroth's put in his head. We then go back to Talon's story. Kieran is having his first proper conversation with Darzan. And Darzan wants to know how Serja fits into this. We all want to know how Serja fits into this, really. But he understands Ola's involvement. She was very close to one of my father's favourite slaves for years, and she was very close to your mother before Ola bought her own freedom. Your mother, Larilyn. We know that Larilyn was killed by a mimic, and that Talon is, or was, Larilyn. And then Darzan admitting, "I am your father. I am your father. I fell in love with my great uncle's slave, Larilyn. She was a slave. They fell in love. It was looked down upon. Larilyn understood the threat to her life and escaped, but she was strangled in the Arena Park during the ascension of Emperor Sandus. Before she left, I believed Larilyn had lost her baby, but she had taken a token of my love, a particular kind of Varney necklace. The Stone of Shackles, which is how Larilyn had the Stone of Shackles. And then when Darzan found this boy with that necklace, he knew that that had to be my missing son." So in this we have confirmed that the story that Ola told Kieran all that time ago was the truth. That is how Kieran came into her possession. It wasn't a god story, it was fact. And Larilyn is his mother, who is now Talon, which is why Talon, when she found Kieran, like, the Larilyn in her came out. And she wanted to protect him and save him. Then we find out that Darzan is a piece of shit, if we didn't know this already. In order to make Kieran comply and do what he wants and become the son that he wants, he is torturing a slave, because Darzan cannot hurt Kieran. Not you, of course. I would never hurt you. You're all I have to remind me of my dear Larilyn. So Kieran is in no danger of being hurt, but he will kill slaves. And then Maya comes in, and I'm very interested to hear more about Maya, because Maya is extraordinary. Like, it's been so long since I met Maya. I'm very interested to see the beginnings of Maya again, so haven't quite got to that part yet, because we then go back to Kirin's story, where he is on the beach with Taenso at the Yunestani island of the Black Brotherhood. They talk again about how Teraith is so pretty, because all Kirin can think about is how pretty Teraith is. And then we have some more foreshadowing of a sorcerer. I don't know his name, I've just always called him Dead Man. So let's remember that there is a sorcerer about to come up at some point who has had the nickname Dead Man. We have again mention of Taenso's late husband. Who is he? Who is he? And then Taenso tells Kirin that he should run because the old man has landed in front of them. We're starting this section on chapter 32. This is Lady Maya. We're back in Talon's POV. Maya is taking Kirin into his rooms, basically, and she's having a discussion with him about the way he behaves, the way he acts, the way he deals with Darzan. It comes to our attention that Lady Maya is not there of her own free will. She doesn't like Darzan too much herself, and she says to Kirin, one does not slay a monster with good intentions. So she's basically saying, like, you're not trained to best him for now. You take it until you are trained to best him. You cannot slay him with good intentions alone. And then we find out that Lady Maya is in fact Geisht, so she is a slave herself. Of course I'm Geisht. I certainly would not be here of my own free will. I am the High Lord Sessional, and highest ranked of the serving staff of the palace. I'm also the High Lord's Geisht slave. So she is Theron's Geisht slave. She essentially says, Darzan may have told you that he is your father, and may have told you that Lorelin is your mother. I can't tell you anything otherwise. Whether it's true or not, dunno. And he says to her, he really is my father? Question. And she says, I can't say. Now, we don't know if this is her saying that she doesn't know, or if this is her saying that she physically cannot say because of a Geisht command. And then we have our narrator coming in saying, I'm inclined to interpret this literally. Not that she didn't know, but that she had been ordered to keep quiet. So, Darzan's not his dad? Lorelin's not his mum? Interesting. Blah, 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 blah. We have more discussion about magic, and we're basically told that Darzan beats his family, because Lady Maya is giving him some salve to put on his wounds, and he's questioning, why would I need a steady supply of this? And she says, Darzan's son Galen does. So we know that Kirin has a brother called Galen, who is being beaten by his father. Now we are back to future Kirin on the island, where the dragon has shown up. The dragon wants Kirin. We know this. The dragon says, I've come for what is mine. Do not hide the golden voice. He is mine. But again, he is stopped by Kemezra. How does Kemezra have this power over this dragon? And the dragon screams, release me, mother, release me this instant. And then we find out the dragon's true name. So the old man is what we know the dragon as. We now know that his name is Shiranical. And then we have a little bit more lore sprinkled in. Shiranical may not be as famous as Balosh or Morios, but there are only 8 dragons in the damn world. There are 8 dragons. There are 8 immortals. Suspicious. And then we have Kirin saying that he wants to learn to fight with a sword, basically. He wants to learn from a sword master. And they say to him, oh, sword's not going to help you against a dragon that wants to kidnap you. And he says the sword is for Darzan. So future Kirin also wants to kill Darzan. Kirin, in all timelines, wants Darzan dead. So Kirin and Lady Maya are again having a conversation about magic. He lets it slip that he thinks that Darzan summoned a demon. Conversation swaps to discussion of Lorelin and Darzan again. And Kirin's family. Kirin basically is saying to Maya, like, why do you care about me? Why do you keep talking to me? Why are you being nice to me? Why do you care? Why do you give a damn? You're not here by choice. Why did my father tell you to look in on me? Blah, blah, blah. And she basically says that the reason she cares is that Larilyn was her handmaiden. Originally, Larilyn was one of the slaves of the High Lord Pedron, but she got to pick a handmaiden and she picked Larilyn. Kieran says, "You knew my mother." She sits down and is unable to really speak properly and says, "There is so much that I cannot say. The Geisha will not allow me to communicate," which pretty much confirms that when she said before, "I can't say," it's not that she doesn't know, it's that she can't tell us. Maya then says, "Darzan claims Larilyn was your mother, but you must not forget that Darzan will lie as suits his vast ambitions. He is not to be trusted." Kieran says, "So you're saying she wasn't my mother? Who was then?" Maya tries to speak, cannot, and then says, "I cannot say." So Maya knows who Kieran's mother is and cannot say. We then come to discussion of the Stone of Shackles. Kieran says he was looking for something, Darzan was looking for the Stone of Shackles, and then Maya confirms, "You wear the Stone of Shackles. The gem you wear around your throat is the Stone of Shackles." So this is where Kieran first finds out that he has the Stone of Shackles. Maya says that it was her doing. "I gave the Stone of Shackles to Larilyn. She must have had enough presence of mind to give it to you. My sweet dove, loyal to the end." So Larilyn was loyal to Maya. And then Kieran's brain starts going. Why would Maya give something so valuable to a handmaiden for the handmaiden to then give it to her baby? You wouldn't give something as valuable as the Stone of Shackles to a handmaiden. But would you give it to a handmaiden if that handmaiden had the responsibility to look after your baby? So Kieran is now thinking that Maya could in fact be his mother. So there's more questions about his family lineage. Who is his mother? Who is not? Is it Larilyn? Is it Maya? Is Darzan even his father? But Darzan claims to be, so that's what's important. We're then back to future Kieran, who tells us that him and Kalindra did become lovers for a small period of time. They are doing some training about capturing a flag, and then it is discovered that a ship is coming to the island and Kalindra is leaving. And Kieran is distraught by this because Kalindra is what makes everything bearable for him on this island. He blames Teraith for this. Like, is Teraith jealous because he used to be lovers with Kalindra? Is Teraith jealous because he wants to be lovers with Kieran and Kalindra and Kieran were lovers? So they got into a little bit of fight. There's a quote here: "You may be too shamed by your precious Kuros masculinity to admit you want me, but that's your problem, not mine. Teraith knows that Kieran wants him." And then, in order to get Kieran to let go of the idea of being with Kalindra, he brings up the dream girl, the blood-haired Jorat girl with eyes like fire, that only Moria and Zaltaroth know about. How does Teraith know about the Jorat dream girl? It's difficult for me to talk about this because I know too much. But how does Teraith know about this? Then they get into a little bit of fight, and the fight gets a little bit saucy because their like hands are all over each other and they clearly want each other. Then we're back in past Kieran, and he meets Alshanae. "Alshanae Damon, I am your stepmother. My condolences," he whispers, and she giggled because she also is maybe not too keen on her situation, maybe. But he tries to escape basically from the Damon house and is stopped by Alshanae, and she drags him back in. Then back to future Kieran, who meets Doc. Doc arrives on this ship, and Doc is a barkeep. But whoever Doc was, he's a man who expects to be obeyed. He reminded me of Teraith. Suspicious. Doc has a Sali stone. Is this an important Sali stone? It is a green stone wrapped in gold. Let's remember that Kieran has a blue one wrapped in whatever it is. I can't remember off the top of my head. But Doc has a very strong personality, and he, in his past, knew a lot of important players in the game. He knew a low-ranked priest who ended up becoming High Lord Theron of House Damon. He knew a fresh-faced farm kid who became Emperor Sandus, and a nephew who climbed his way into the High General's chair. So he knows people in high-up places. But he is a strong character, and is going to be Kieran's sword master. Back in Talon's story, Kieran's first encounter with Lord Theron. Alshanae takes him to Lord Theron's room, and up until this point, Kieran has thought that Lord Theron is going to be Dead Man. However, he looked nothing like Dead Man. So Lord Theron is not Dead Man. And if Dead Man isn't Pretty Boy's father, who is he? Who is Dead Man? We still don't know. But we have encountered Lord Theron, who also says very similar things to what Lady Maya said. I do not care whether or not Darzen's story is true. You are God-touched, you are a useful commodity, you're an investment, and as long as you're a sound investment, your stay here can be enjoyable. The singular part of Darzen's claim that I have no doubt is absolute truth is that our blood runs through your veins. So they do believe that he is House Demon, but whether Darzen is his father, still up for debate. Theron has accepted Darzen into the family and into the house, so there's no point in trying to prove that Darzen's not his father, because ultimately there's nothing Kieran can do about it anymore. He is a demon. End of story. And then we have a little bit more discussion about Kieran's magical abilities that he didn't know he has in regards to his trick to pass unseen. He always thought it was just good luck, that he could kind of mutter to himself, don't see me, you can't see me, and then no one could see him. But it turns out it's his witch gift. Theron knows an awful lot about Kieran's past and his time with the Shadow Dancers and his time as Rook and all of his mischief there, because Theron owns the Shadow Dancers. No one knew that Theron owned the Shadow Dancers, but turns out I took control of the Shadow Dancers over 20 years ago. So Theron knows a lot about Kieran's past and a lot of those secret things that he wouldn't have thought that House Demon would have known about him. Turns out they do. And they know Ola as well, because Ola used to be one of Theron's slaves, but she bought her freedom, remember that? That takes us up to chapter 39, page 308 in the paperback. So we're about halfway. Let's continue, friends. Excuse the shower hair. I've just had a shower. But we're on chapter 39. Kieran's story. The only thing I have highlighted on this page is Kieran calling Teraith an arsehole, because I just love their banter. Then we had Kieran very aggressively asking how Teraith knew about Dream Girl, and Teraith has finally said, I met her in the afterlife. So obviously we know that Teraith has just performed that ritual where he's killed himself, so he's been to the afterlife. He met Dream Girl in the afterlife. So Kieran is now like, so she's dead. The woman I'm obsessed with in my dreams is dead. And Teraith says, technically speaking, so was I, so I don't actually think she's dead. Not everyone in the afterlife is dead. There's this theory that she could be a demon, but she can't be a demon, but she could be a demon. She's not a god, so how is she living in the afterlife, whoever she is? And then we have some discussion around Teraith's father. Kieran says, what's the deal with your father? And then we find out that Teraith's father is Prince Terendel. Terendel the Black. And there's lots of horrible stories about the things that Terendel did, such as demanding human sacrifices. And he played a big part in the Varney War. And then I just have more highlighted banter between them because I adore them. Then we go back to Talon's story, where we have Alshanae with Darzen. But it is in this chapter that we realise that Alshanae is in fact Talon. Talon is Alshanae. Alshanae says, Ducky, you use too much. It's like, Ducky? That's a Talon thing. And then we have Darzen saying to Alshanae, God, you have to look like her. And then she says, perhaps you shouldn't have married her then. Do you realise she looked like this just to annoy you? She's really quite pretty. She's really quite dead. So we know that Alshanae, Darzen's wife, is dead. And in her place, as Alshanae, we have Talon. As Darzen says, I didn't kill him to satisfy your appetites, Talon. So we have the confirmation that Alshanae is Talon, which makes the way that Alshanae is interacting with Kieran interesting, because it's Talon. And Kieran already knows Talon as a murderer. And then we have some confessions from Darzen. Fine, you're right, he's not my son, but since his real father will never have the stones to admit the truth, claiming him lets me control the brat, so no, you can't kill him. So Talon wants to kill him, wants to eat him, because he's so delicious. So we have confirmation that Darzen is not Kieran's father here, from Darzen, but that Darzen knows who Kieran's father is. The next page, we have confirmation of who Dad is. Poor Theron. He frees Ola and she repays him by stealing the son he won't admit is his anyway. So Theron is Kieran's dad, which is why Theron has claimed Kieran as a demon, because Theron knows that Kieran is, but he can't claim him as his own son, so is allowing Darzan to claim him as his son, when he is in fact Darzan's brother, not Darzan's son. Got some witty comments from the narrator that I absolutely love. I take some consolation in knowing that Talon lied to absolutely everybody. And then we have some more information about the Stone of Shackles. The necklace lends its wearer a kind of immortality. And then Talon says to Darzan that he already owns something that would hold quite a lot of power over Kieran, and that is Moria's sister, Talia. The best part, darling, you already own her. And then we have a very small chapter from Kieran, which is just him being so absolutely heartbroken and upset about what Talon's just told him, saying, I've had enough of this damn story. Words cannot express how much I loathe you. Take your damn rock back. I've had enough. Do you think that after you've tormented me, betrayed me, haunted me at every time, murdered my friends, orchestrated all of this, that I would want to play story time with you? Ugh, very sad. So then we go back to Talon's story, where we meet Galen. But before we get into that story, we have some information from Talon saying, like, do you think I'm doing this story time with you for my own amusement? This rock will record this entire conversation, and this story will be told from your perspective. Like, you can't silence the rock. And Sergia was quite an enchanter, Kieran's adopted father at the beginning. He taught me a few tricks. Any words spoken by holding this stone are stored inside to be heard again later. At least for this singular occasion, she was good for her word. I wouldn't count on it happening ever again. And then we go into Talon's story about Galen. Galen was 14 years old when Kieran joined House Demon. Couldn't remember a year of existence when he wasn't afraid. So we know that Galen is terrified of his father, who is Darzan. When Galen was no longer the heir of the house and Kieran came in, he wasn't upset or disappointed by this, he was relieved. Darzan beats him, and Darzan is cruel to him, and Darzan pushes him too far, and it's because I care, I want you to be the best, because Darzan is a twat, obviously. So we have a little bit of context on Galen's history. And then we're back to Kieran. The dragon's deal, which actually is not much of a dragon's deal at all. He tries to make a deal with the old man and play him a song. And he's kind of tricked by the dragon into being, like, stuck in this almost hypnosis, I suppose. Like, he can't leave, he can't stop playing, he's been stuck by this dragon. But the dragon says some interesting things to him. Do you want me to teach you magic, destroy your enemies, show you how to become a god? Do the dragons know how to become gods? Interesting piece of information that I have highlighted there. Then we're back to Talon's story with Galen. Galen is admiring Kieran almost, like he's the golden boy. He had the sort of face to be worn by a man who was too pretty and knew he was too pretty. And then Darzan is telling Galen, like, you need to get close to Kieran and you need to tell me everything that he says, everything that he does. So then Galen meets Kieran, and Kieran is pretty much saying, like, he's not my dad. Don't think he's my dad. And Galen is saying, he is your father, I can prove it. Can you? Yes, follow me. Back to Kieran's story again. Doc releases Kieran from the dragon's trance hypnosis. So, like, how has Doc got that sort of power? Interesting. Was he a wizard? Maybe. Why has Doc got that power? And then we have some information from Doc about Comesra. Comesra isn't Varney. The Varney are the only immortal race left, but Comesra isn't Varney. Comesra is Voromir. So we thought that Comesra was a Varney, but she is not. And why are the Varney the only immortal race left? Which is a question that Kieran asks. Doc says, that's my fault. The Varney were supposed to have been the ones to sacrifice their immortality, not the Voromir. It was, as they say, our turn. Our turn to what? What's going on, Doc? Why did the Varney have to sacrifice themselves? And how come the Voromir ended up sacrificing themselves instead? What's going on? I have a little foreshadowing tab there, because we will find out at a later date. Back to Talon's story. Galen has taken Kieran to his, like, secret room and is showing him this portrait of Pedron. You see the resemblance, he looks just like you. and then Galen realised that Kieran looked heartbroken. This wasn't a rescue but a sentence. Like, he can no longer deny that he's related to them. Of course he's related to them. He is a spitting image of Pedron. He was our great-great-uncle. His mother was this Varney slave with golden hair. So this is how we assume that Kieran's then got Varney in his blood somehow. Theron's father was Pedron's half-brother. So we're building a family tree here. And we know that Theron is Kieran's father. So that makes Pedron Kieran's great-uncle. There is clearly a closer relation between Kieran and Pedron, and this is a sentence for him. They have a look at an inscription on the thing and realise that what you've really done is proven that High Lord Pedron wasn't our great whatever uncle. Wait, I don't understand. Don't you get it? I wouldn't have this hair unless I was related to Pedron's Varney mother, with the one with distinctive golden hair. What was her name again? I don't remember. Val something? Pedron's Varney mother is clearly related to Kieran, which actually would mean that Pedron was Theron's father, which would make Pedron Kieran's grandfather. Interesting development in family tree happens very quickly there. Then Kieran discovers Galen's poetry book, because Galen is a soft-hearted little princess who wants to do poetry, but Daddy doesn't approve, and Kieran thinks that it's really good. Kieran and Galen kind of bond, and that's not what Galen was supposed to do here, but they bond, and Kieran says, I think you're okay for a demon, and they kind of get this little brotherly bond going on, and it was cute. Then we're back in Kieran's story, and he's in a dream. And a lot happens in this dream. In the dream, he wakes up and is addressed as Your Majesty. Queen Cavets is inside the fortress, so he realises that he is the king of the Corpus Varney. This messenger says to him, your wife, the queen, Valathea, she's safe. So we know that Valathea is special. Was this another god-inspired vision? Why is Kieran having this vision of being King Calendel? He still has the Stone of Shackles. What's going on? We have some kind of background information about the war between the Corpus Varney and Queen Cavates. Lots of battle scenes that keep repeating themselves, what's just happened, and he has to, like, repeatedly do this battle to work out how to win it. This was all wrong. He realises that what's happening in his vision in the past is all wrong, and he notes this is all wrong. And I think it's important to note there, like, can we rely on the history of this world that we've been told actually being right, considering how much lie and deceit we know is going on in it? And then Terendel, Prince Terendel, appears in this vision as well. I nearly choked. Teraith's father, Terendel, that was the wrong name. So clearly something is going wrong. But no, this was not Teraith, because it looked just like Teraith. It was not Teraith, blah, 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 blah. But the emerald green Sali stone around his neck was the very same stone that Doc wore, which makes me suspicious. We were at family dinner last time we spoke, and it was an eventful family dinner for sure. So Kieran was having dinner with the whole Damon family, and we realised quite how large that Damon family is. Talking about getting married and Alshane being scandalous. And there was a comment about, oh, you and Alshane weren't very old when you got married, and then one of the uncles says, oh, and look how well that turned out. And we know that Alshane's dead, so a murdered wife. But I don't know if the family know that, but we know that, because the Alshane that is present is actually Talon. And then Darzan and Kieran have a massive conflict, as Darzan says something about Kieran's mother being a common whore, and then Kieran is just an attitudey little thing. Don't you mean common slut? She was a slut. She was a slave, so she couldn't sell her body. It wasn't hers to sell, so she couldn't be a whore, but she could be, and quite frankly probably was required to be, a slut. They have this big argument. Lady Maya is laughing, which is bizarre. And then the rest of the family are like, oh, well, that settles it. He's one of us. He's a twat like the rest of us, a mirror twin of Pedron, so they can all see it. They all know that he's the twin of Pedron. And then Darzan follows Kieran out and is like, I will kill you, I will fucking kill you. And then Kieran is still just being so attitudey, even being threatened with murder from his father, because Kieran is at a point where he hasn't got much to lose. And then Theron stops them from, like, having this massive fight and killing each other. Theron confronts Darzan. So Kieran is in hiding at this point. He's like hiding in a corner using his magical you can't see me ability. Darzan is saying to Theron, like, he's mine to do with as I wish, and Theron's like, and you're mine to do with as I wish, and Darzan's like, I will expose all of your secrets, and Theron says, my secrets are merely embarrassing, they are not treasonous. And we have some suggestion that Theron knows a lot about what Darzan's doing and is covering it up. But Theron says, I can quite easily be pushed to the point where I no longer care. You, on the other hand, will always be the most important thing in your world. If we must play a game of bluff, I will win for the simple reason that I am never bluffing. And then Darzan said, I should have killed that slut myself when I realised she was pregnant. Theron slapped him and says, be gone from my sight. Because obviously Theron knows that Kieran is his. Darzan knows that Kieran is Theron's. So who is the slut? Is it Maya? Larilyn? Because everyone seems to still be going on with this charade that it's Larilyn. But Maya has told us that she... Well, not told us because she can't tell us, but we think that it's not Larilyn and is... maybe Maya. Then we have a discussion on the affair of the voices, and this is how the royal houses, who are forbidden from ruling themselves but had some sort of thing that Theron doesn't even understand. We did something, no one is sure what anymore. It's a secret lost to the ages, but our narrator says it's not that lost. The royal families murdered the emperor and the gods were annoyed because he had been in the middle of doing something for them. So the royal houses angered the gods by murdering the emperor, and then the gods have been punishing them. And then we discuss a prophecy. The people who were responsible for the affair of the voices believed in a prophecy. Wizard, thief, knight and king, the children will not know the names of their fathers who quiet the voices' sting. And we find out that Pedron is the thief mentioned in this prophecy, and Gadrith Dolores was the wizard. So this is the first we've heard of Gadrith Dolores. Gadrith the Twisted, another important name that I have tabbed, was also part of this prophecy for killing the emperor, bringing the voices of the houses up. And then Kieran and Theron have a big argument about, like, what has Darzan got to do for you to stop protecting him? Then we're back to Kieran's story, present-day Kieran, where we discover that that dream that he had was the result of poison from Doc. Doc poisoned him to put him into this dream to train him, because Doc is supposed to be training him to be a swordmaster. And this is how Doc does it. In these dreams, making him relive these battle scenes, learn from his mistakes, and win. How many times did you die? Blah, 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 blah. You drugged me, let's talk about that. And then he mentions again the green Sarli stone around Doc's neck. It was the same stone the Manor Varney had been wearing, the one who had taunted and killed Terendel in that vision. Chainbreaker. You wear the Stone of Shackles, I wear its brother Chainbreaker. You and I are part of a small and exclusive club with only 8 members in the whole world. We've got 8 again, so we know there are 8 cornerstones, there are 8 gods, 8 immortals, 8 dragons. 8 is a very important number. And then we have a full explanation of what the Stone of Shackles can do, in terms of, if I were to kill you whilst you wore that chunk of rock, your body would die, but the stone would switch our souls. My soul, and not yours, would be the one to go and stand before Thane, whilst you would find yourself enjoying a new body. So the stone switches the souls, so the soul of the killed lives on, and the soul of the killer is the one that actually dies. The killed just inhabits the killer's body, which means, as we have now established, Larilyn's soul lived on in the body of the mimic who had slain her. In the vision, I was wearing the Stone of Shackles. I was Terendel. I was King Terendel. I was wearing the Stone of Shackles when I was killed by a Manor Varney who just so happens to resemble Wraith more than a little. You, said Teraith's father, was a fool. Doc Tyrrendale chuckled. So he has worked out that when King Tyrrendale was killed, he was wearing the Stone of Shackles, which means that the person who killed him, who looks exactly like Doc and was wearing the same stone that Doc is wearing. So King Tyrrendale's soul now lives in Doc. So Doc is King Tyrrendale. And then we have a discussion of, what about Valathea, your wife? She was betrayed. They sentenced her to the Traitor's Walk. Ooh, which we know that Lorillin was also sentenced to as well before she ran away. Back to Talon's story. Alshanae has decided that she likes Kirin. Alshanae has said, I didn't believe you were Darzan's son until tonight, but we know that Alshanae is Talon, so we know that she knows better than that. Alshanae kind of tries to seduce Kirin, tries to make a move on him, but he was still suffering the flashbacks of Zaltaroth. And the amount of times that Alshanae calls him Ducky, and I'm just thinking, like, how do you not recognise that tone, like that voice, as Talon? Because you've met Talon. And every time I see Ducky, I'm just drawing a little duck. And then we discuss the rooms that Kirin's in, and how the room he's in used to be Lady Maya's, and prior to that it was Lady Nora's. Lady Nora was Theron's wife. She died in childbirth. Theron was very depressed about this, so Lady Maya moved into Lady Nora's rooms, closer to Theron's, and was almost running the house and pretending that she was getting these orders from Theron. So Lady Maya is responsible for the fact that House Demon is doing well, because Theron almost let it crumble for a while. Lady Maya comes off as an angel made flesh, but she ran this house like a general for 2 years, and we moved up in rank during her tenure. I will never underestimate this woman. You told me she was a sheltered veal calf. I lie a lot, says Alshanae. Yeah, you do. We also see how Theron became Lord Heir, which is that 8 people ahead of him in line for that title had mysteriously died, and our narrator tells us it really wasn't that mysterious. The family members that Pedron didn't sacrifice to summon demons died during the affair of the Voices. It was a violent time. So Pedron is responsible for a lot of death. We then have some of the narrator's input saying that Lorillin and Maya were close, but he doesn't believe what the characters are telling us. Maya didn't like the attention that Darzan was giving Lorillin and told Theron to put a stop to it. Our narrator doesn't believe the truth in that, but we do believe that Lorillin and Maya were close. So I'm looking forward to us discovering more about Lorillin and Maya's relationship, so we can work out for certain which one of them is Kirin's mother. I'm leaning towards Maya. And then we've just got more of Alshanae seducing Kirin, Talon being a liar, an actress, Kirin confirming to us that he likes both girls and boys. Prefers girls, usually, but likes girls and boys. Good for him. And then Talon getting Kirin drunk so she can take advantage of him because she's a fucking monster. Then we're back in the Rock Garden, which is older Kirin's story. He overhears a conversation between Doc and Comesra talking about how Kirin is the spitting image of Pedron, and he has a history with Pedron. And then, oh, don't you mean he's a spitting image of Tyrrendale? About Teraith as well. And then at this point, even I am confused. I'm not here as a favour to Theron or Comesra. You're here because I'm descended from Tyrrendale. Not from you, technically, as you aren't in Tyrrendale's original body, but I'm guessing, what was your daughter's name? Blah, 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 blah. She was supposed to be executed along with your wife, Valathea. So, in my mind, I'm building up a picture of, on the, like, Demon side, we know that there was a Varney involved, somehow related to Tyrrendale, which is how Kirin is a descendant of Tyrrendale, but also potential Varney blood from Maya. Everything will become clear, but at this point I'm like, I don't understand Kirin's heritage whatsoever. And then Doc tells us a little bit about his life and how he masqueraded as a guy named Nikali. Nikali Milligreast? Oh my god, you're Nikali Milligreast? He is a legend. Kieran gets super excited about this. And then there's some more soul stuff that confuses me because at this point I don't know enough about the Demon heritage and stuff. But we're talking about Terendale's daughter, Valrashar, who was sold as a slave to Theron. And then we have, does Theron know? Oh gods no, hey buddy of mine. Did you know that I was once your great-grandfather? Though not anymore, because I've switched bodies since then. Oh, also, your Aunt Tashara is technically the long-lost heir to the Kirpisvane throne. I don't know how we're there yet. I'm assuming we will get there. But yeah, at this point, like, all the soul stuff is getting a bit fuzzy. And then Kieran decides to do the crazy thing and go and talk to the old man again. Let's go talk to a dragon, and asks the dragon about the Stone of Shackles, and the dragon gives us a more clear answer of its powers. The Stone of Shackles, Soulbinder, the Crown of Kirpis. Its first power is to warn its owner of physical danger. Its second power is to swap souls, and its third power makes the taking of geishas possible. So we now know exactly what the stone can do. And then the dragon, once again, tries to lure in Kieran. He tries to get away, and we have a little note about, I'd been through this before. I don't know where, I don't know when, I didn't know how, but somehow I'd been through it before. I've been through it before, and I think that is a hint at like a past life sort of thing for Kieran. Then we're back at Talon's story, the morning after the night before, where Talon was an absolute monster, and Darzin realises that the brat had bedded his wife, and for a moment Darzin forgets who his wife is. In a bit, remembers it, and says the real Alshane Demon had been dead for weeks now, her body and brain devoured by the ever-hungry mimic who had taken her place, her soul sacrificed to summon Zaltaroth, the very same Zaltaroth Darzin had used to track down the Stone of Shackles, and its bearer. So that's why Alshane was murdered. And then we have the whole charade of him pretending to be super mad about it, but Talon has entirely orchestrated this and given Darzin this opportunity. And then again, just Kieran's attitude, like he is being torn down, and he's all like, no, don't be mad at her, because he doesn't know that she orchestrated this, and he actually thinks that he cares for this woman. And then he tries to say, like, no, don't be mad at her, this wasn't her fault, it was all me, I forced her, but Kieran's currently tied up to the bed because he's into a little bit of bondage. And then he's like, oh, that would have gone better if I wasn't still tied up, wouldn't it? Yes, probably. So they know it wasn't him, and they know it was Alshane, and then Darzin is like, I'm proud of you, but don't touch my wife again. If you touch my wife again, it's not you I'll kill her. But it's all a charade, because it's not her, it's Talon. We are at chapter 53. Kieran needs to know how to get away from this dragon. He needs to get past his magical block. And he asks Taenso, like, what the way that she learnt magic was, and how they could use that on him. We basically find out that Taenso learnt her magic from a ghost. Ghostly possession. So she says, it worked for me, I see no reason why it wouldn't work for you. You want me to let a ghost take possession of my body and teach me magic. Assuming that would even work, and assuming I'm crazy enough and desperate enough to agree, where are we going to find a ghost? I'm going to be the ghost. Taenso is going to be the ghost that teaches Kieran magic. She's currently living. And then we're back on Talon's story, so young Kieran. And he has an interaction with his aunt Tashar. He wasn't going to run away, he just needs to go to the Octagon. Aunt Tashar covers for him and takes him to the Octagon. And we then find out that Aunt Tashar is Pedron's sister. But she seems to actually care about him. Like, she's actually helping him out, which is quite nice. And we have a bit of a, like, moral conversation around whether Tashar agreed with what Pedron was doing. He didn't think he was an evil man, he thought he was doing what was right. And Tish understands gossip, and Tish has worked out that Kieran slept with Alshane. But she kind of discusses it with him, and it's like, I know how tempting it must be to blame yourself for what happened, or even to say that it was no one's fault, but I want you to remember that only one of the people in your bedroom last night was legally of age. And again, he tries to cover it. He's like, I'm almost 16. We drank too much, and one thing led to another, and blah, blah, blah. And she says, Alshane could drink anyone under the table. Like, the alcohol will have only affected you. The important question here is, did you want it? And he admits, no. Gods, no, he didn't want it. And Tish is like, well, Alshane's been acting oddly for months now. It's time I confront her about it. Because she's not Alshane. She's Talon. Back to Kieran's story, like future Kieran. He comments, I'm impressed you had the guts to admit that, Talon. And then he says, then again, you've done a lot worse than take advantage of a teenage boy. We then discuss the ghost situation with Tyenso again, and we find out that Falon Jadeyraereads is the ghost that taught Tyenso. And Tyenso finds out that Kemesra knows him, and Kemesra says, I know everyone who dies. Because she is the High Priest of Thane. She knows every dead person. Suspicious. So we go through the ordeal that in order to become a ghost, Tyenso will have to kill herself. So basically, they're asking her to perform the ritual that we've seen, the Mevanos, where she's going to kill herself, present herself to Thane, and see if she'll be returned. But Kieran's like, wait a minute, why don't we all just take a breath? And then Tyenso stabs herself. No going back. Kieran tries to look through the veil so he can kind of see what's happening with Tyenso, and Thane, we meet Thane. He thought it was Kemesra grabbing his shoulder, but he looks up and realizes that it's Thane in this, like, vision. She exposes Tyenso's history, really. Tyenso, once named Reveri, daughter of Rava, I have seen your soul, you have been judged, I will not be returning you. Your life was a test, you're a murderer, a demonologist, an arrogant liar who betrayed people who trusted you and sent the souls of hundreds to hell. What sacrifice were you unwilling to burn on the altar of revenge? You never had a life worth living. What have you done with yourself but spread misery? What do you leave to the world that made it even the tiniest bit better than it would have been without you? Spend as long as you like teaching Kieran, assuming he'll have anything to do with you, but I will not be returning you. So, Tyenso's dead. Back to Talon's story at the Octagon. Basically, Kieran wants to buy Moria's sister Talia, and they're on the hunt for her. They go to watch the slave auction, basically, and find out that a person of House Dolores has just bought Talia. The only slave he has bought is Talia. And we see that the slave that has been taken is Fervishar Dolores, which we know from the very beginning is the narrator of our story, the person with the footnotes and stuff. So all of this commentary on Fervishar, we've got, he's a large man, tall, broad of shoulder, with the perfectly smooth pate of one bald by nature rather than art. Tish finds him very attractive, it would seem. And then we see Fervishar Dolores is Gadrith's only son. And then Fervishar saying, there were always rumours this wasn't true, but I think everyone assumed I was an Ojanre plucked up by the High Lord Cedric Dolores after the affair of the Voices. No one questioned it too closely. Truth in the upper circle is whatever a High Lord says it is. But we think that Fervishar is Gadrith's only son. Back to Kieran's story. Kieran and Tyenso kind of have a debate of who's done worse. And Tyenso says that Kieran is one of her special prophecy brats, like one of Thane's special prophecy brats. Like, he's too important to be killed or to rot in the afterlife, but she thinks that she's disposable. And then Tyenso realises that Kieran can still see her, despite her being dead. But mortals can't do that, and Kieran's like, well, I assume that's Thane is doing then. And then Tyenso tries to possess Kieran, as was the instruction, but this basically gives Kieran a panic attack, because he doesn't like this idea of being controlled by something that's not him. It's the fear he's got with the dragon, it's the fear that Zaltaroth embedded in him as well, like, he doesn't like this control. Something inside Kieran snapped, and that quickly we were no longer in Yenistane. They're off the island, but where are they? Back to Talon's story. Kieran goes to buy a slave, and he buys Merritt, who is one of the boys that he used to run around with in the Shadow Dancer days, who has been kind of sold out by Ferris, and he employs Merritt to go back to the Shattered Veil Club to basically see if they can find anything that Darzin's men have left behind. He also buys Star, who is a Jorat horse lover, who is very good at stealing horses. Back to Kieran's perspective, his commentary, you killed Merritt. Merritt is part of your collection, because for Talon to be able to tell Merritt's story, she must have Merritt in her. So, kind of a comment in passing, like, You killed Merritt as well? When did that happen? Oh, never mind. Let's get on with the rest of the story. So in this new location that Kieran is in, he makes the comment, I've been here before, but he doesn't know where he is or when he's been here before. So I think that is hint at a past life where he's been there before. It was as if I was looking at something so familiar to me that if I could just concentrate, I would remember how I knew it and why he had called me there. So there's this figure, and he's really drawn to it, but again, he can't explain why. And then we discover that it is Valkaroth, the king of the demons, and they are in Karaskolgroth, where the kingdom of the demons is. And somehow that's where Kieran took them, and somehow Kieran finds that a very familiar place that he has drawn to, but doesn't know why. And in this place, he recognises the Phantom Wizard of House Dolores. He recognised him. It was Deadman. So, you know, way back we had Pretty Boy and Deadman. So Darzan Damon, Pretty Boy, is in cahoots with Deadman, Gadrith Dolores the Twisted. And, oh my god, how does Tienzo know Gadrith? I thought you would have worked it out by now, Scamp. He was my husband. Which makes Tienzo Gadrith the Twisted's wife and Thurvisha Dolores' mother. Or publicly acknowledged mother, at least. Then we see some images in rock. And these images, so we're still at Karas Golgoth. I can never remember that place. Karas Golgoth, we're still there. And he comes across these images, like, carved into rock, of 8 people gathered around a glowing crystal. 8 figures, the same figures, followed by another one holding a symbol, and the 8 figures fighting monsters, and another scene with one of the 8 and one with a star symbol, and another ring of 8 people, each one carrying a crystal. There's a 9th man plunging a sword through the man with the star symbol. The man with the star symbol was gone, nothing left of him but a silhouette carved into the stone, a negative outline with an angry chiseled lines radiating out. No signs of the 9 men and women who had been there, just 9 undulating shapes, each crawling away in a different direction. There were 8 shattered pieces of crystal and a single twisted sword. After that, images of people dying, demons everywhere, fire raining down from the skies. This wasn't a story with a happy ending. Who carved these? Foreshadowing. And then they get attacked by the Morgagi people. And one of them is a woman, and a woman happens to be a sorceress, which makes this incredibly difficult for them. They're being attacked by a Morgagi sorceress. They are in trouble. And then a voice steps through and says, "You're a long way from home, little brother." And the voice was Relos Var, because Kieran seems to have brothers everywhere. What is this family tree? Back to Talon's story. We see what Kieran's done with the Durat horse slave that he bought. He has given him to the High Lord to help Darzan with his horses, to persuade Darzan to let them go out on a trip to the culling fields. Relevant, but kind of irrelevant. And then they're in their secret hidey hole with the big statue of Thane, where they were before, where they saw the portrait of Pedron. And they're in there having a little bit of a picnic, and then a door opens and voices come through, so they hide and they are freaking the fuck out. And there are 3 voices. One of them is Darzan's. These voices comment on how originally this piece of the house was a mausoleum, a tomb built for Sarek Damon the 8th and the 4 dozen concubines he had ordered to be killed upon the occasion of his death. It was then converted into a demon summoning chamber by High Lord Pedron 20 years ago. They plan to use it as a demon summoning place again. This is the place where Pedron was claimed by his demon. No wonder you wanted me to see it. We don't know who these voices are, other than Darzan, but one of them is described as a dead voice, which makes us think of Deadman, which makes us now think of Gadra. And Darzan says, "You'll have your sacrifice." So they plan on making a sacrifice in this old demon summoning room that they're now going to use as a demon summoning room again. One of the voices, we don't know who, when they're leaving, says to the door, "Don't come back, next time he'll find you." So one of the voices knew that Galen and Kieran was in there and has advised them not to come back. That was the rich timbered voice, so I don't know who that one is. But someone is looking out for them just a little bit. Chapter 61. Kieran's story. Wait, little brother? So Relos Var's just said that Kieran is his little brother, as I said. Brothers everywhere. And Kieran's picked up on this. I was definitely not that. Maybe he meant it in the way Darzan liked to call me, boy. We will find out very soon, dear Kieran, that you may in fact be that. But Relosvar can see Tyenso in Kieran and, like, rips her out of him. Relosvar says to Tyenso, I hope you're still not working with your father. The only thing worse than a power-hungry fool is a power-hungry fool who thinks he's smarter than everyone else. Relosvar, are you talking about yourself there, my dude? Tyenso's stare was ice. I guess that confirms he's really alive. Kieran thinks they're talking about Gadrith, but no, Gadrith's not your father, he's your husband. And Tyenso's like, yeah, he was that too. Don't look at me like that. So, Tyenso is daughter and wife to Gadrith. Kieran thinks that Relos is going to kill him. He's not going to kill him. Why, in the heavens, would I do that? You're going to save us all. What have they been teaching you? I like this quote from Kieran. I'll be honest, I was growing a bit tired of being passed around like a favourite dish at dinner, and that's because the way I describe this book all the time, like, he is wanted by the gods, the dragons, the demons, the royal houses, the rest of the world. Like, everyone wants a little piece of him because he features in so many prophecies. He is literally being passed around like a dish at dinner. They can't defeat Relosvar, but Kieran thinks that a goddess might be able to, so he kind of prays to Tarja, and Tarja appears. Relosvar had backed down against Kemezra, but would not back down against Tarja, and then Thane arrives and says, you might beat one of us, but not all of us. And then after that, Tyre arrives as well. So we've got Tarja, Thane, and Tyre, goddess of magic, luck, and death. The three sisters. All of you perhaps, but all of you are not here, whereas all 9 of us are. Who are the 9? What are the odds that a fight with the 4 of us here in this place wouldn't wake him? I made all of you. Do you think I cannot destroy you if I wish it? Relosvar made the gods. Interesting. You're not taking him, Tarja said. We will not allow it. You shouldn't have brought him back, Relosvar said. It was cruel. Tyre looked at him in the way one might look at a person once loved, someone who had hurt them deeply. Interesting piece of foreshadowing here. The hungry one stirs. So there is a beast being kept deep within, and it stirs. Secrets are being held from Kieran at this point by the goddesses, and he thinks he's on the goddess's side, but he clearly doesn't know enough or anything. And Relosvar says to him, when you grow tired of their evasions and their cleverly twisted truths that counterfeit better than lies, come find me. I will not deceive you. Tyenso says to Kieran, who are you, scamp? And he's like, you know who I am. She says, no, I don't, and I don't think you know either. This shit doesn't happen to the runaway child of a 4th-ranked house. So Kieran then asks Tarja, how did he find me? How did he know I was here? What did he mean? What's he talking about? And she just says, now is not the time. So yet again, not being told answers. We're then back in Talon's story, so younger Kieran, where we have confirmation that the spooky dead voice that we assumed was Gadrith is Gadrith. Kieran says, yeah, that was Dead Man. That's my nickname for the fellow with the spooky voice. We then have some filthy gossip about Aunt Tishar and Gadrith. Even our narrator says, malicious gossip, nothing more. And then I've highlighted the point as well that Dead Man said about the 3rd person being Sandus's son. Emperor Sandus, our 3rd person. So we've got Darzan, Gadrith. 3rd person is Sandus's son. We then follow Kieran and Galen going to the culling fields, which is the famed arena, and it reminds Kieran of the story of how he was found. This is where, if she was his mother, Larillan had met her fate, where Ola had found him as a newborn babe. But why they had disguised the truth all of these years, that was where the mystery lay. Will we ever get the answer to this mystery? They find a tavern near the culling fields where Kieran is looking for a woman called Torna, I believe, which is who Merritt was going to give anything he found from the Shattered Veil Club to for Kieran to go and retrieve. And she does. She gives him a gold ring set with an intaglio ruby. I've seen rings worn before on the least likely of fingers, all of them carved with that same crown and griffin. It's a kind of club, I figure. A very secret club, that pays no attention to race, sex, or class. And then our narrator tells us the Griffin's Men, or at least such is what I call them. I have no idea what they call themselves, but they're a group interested in prophecies. I begin to think I've underestimated this cabal in particular. What their goals are is still unknown to me, but looking at the evidence, we can clearly count Kieran's adopted father, Serja, among their ranks, and at least one emperor as well. And then we also find out that Torna is Doc's adopted daughter. Then we're back to Kieran's story, and we finally have the confirmation that Kemezra is Thane. There has been so much, foreshadowing of that, so many little hints dropped that Kemezra is Thane, and Kieran finally works it out, and he is asking Thane about the things that Relosvar said. He said he created you. How could Relosvar have created the 8 immortals? The 8 created the world, you created the world. Yet when he said he made you, you didn't protest. Kemezra sighed, the 8 did not create the universe, we were empowered. By Relosvar? That wasn't his name back then, but yes, by Relosvar. She explains how they were fighting an endless war. We had no interest in enslaving people, we sacrificed everything to save the people. You're fighting a war you cannot win. You're trying to fight demons, you're failing, and imagine a very clever man comes along and tells you that he can give you the keys you need to fight these demons. He can give you the keys to drive them back so millions of your people live. All you have to do is let yourself be tied to a cosmic force. You'll have power beyond imagination. You'll be removed from your race, your family, your friends, from everyone you care for. And that's not the worst part. The worst part is that the job will never end. You will be a soldier standing on the wall forever, guarding those who cannot protect themselves. You cannot die, and you will serve until the end of the universe. You will never be able to put aside your burden and hand it off to someone else and go back to a civilian life. Would you volunteer for that? And Kieran says, yes, if I knew what I was getting myself into, if it was my choice, yes, I would. And Thane, Kemezra, says, that's what you said the last time, too. And then Kieran is saying, excuse me? Are you implying that I have held that job? That I used to be one of the 8? And then, I love this page. This whole page. Pretty much, yes. None of the 8 have ever been killed. We're tied to elemental forces. You have to destroy the force to destroy us. However, lest Relosvar claim I'm being deceptive, you should know that we have not been 8 in number for many years. Lots of different worship about the 8th member. There's theories about who their 8th member is. The Vijay worship him as Selenol, the sun god, and claim that he is dead. None of these theories are right, but the Vijay are perhaps closest to the truth. Even if the name they worship has drifted over the years, what they don't understand is that Sarek never died. So where is he? You met him tonight, locked away in the centre of Karas Golgoth. He opened his eyes as you approached. The demons have renamed him Volkaroth. So Sarek, one of the 8 immortals, has been imprisoned and renamed by the demons as Valkaroth, King of the Demons. Kieran still thinks that things are being kept from him, and he's not wrong. You are young. What you are not yet ready to know would fill the Great Library back in Kerr. So there's a lot. I have my reasons, and I think they're good reasons. You're in no position to judge, but knowing you, you'll keep pushing until you find out. I don't know for certain why you appeared in Karas Golgoth tonight, but I don't think that any outside force was responsible. You did it, and you did it as a primal response as being possessed by Tienzo. I didn't really know of any reason I'd have any sort of sympathy with a fallen, imprisoned god. I closed my eyes. I did know. I could lie to myself for 1,000 years, but on some level I knew. I just couldn't say it. I couldn't make that leap and admit that truth out loud. So, Sarek was the one in the drawings I saw on the walls. I mean, I'm assuming Relosvar led one of the 8 away from the others and performed some sort of ritual, and afterwards everything was a mess and Sarek was just a dark outline, so that must be the Morgagi telling the story of how Sarek became Valkaroth, yes? Yes. Okay, so why Sarek? I assumed Relosvar lied about what would happen back then. You all acted like he betrayed you and killed your favourite puppy. I'm guessing Sarek was that puppy. Why did he pick Sarek? Isn't it obvious? When Relosvar invented the ritual to create the 8 gods, he assumed he would be one of the recipients. When he was not, the rest assumed that he would be content with the judgment of our government. And we were, all of us, wrong. He picked Sarek for the purest of petty emotions. jealousy. Sarek was his younger brother. And then we have a recap of what Relisvar said. You're a long way from home, little brother. You shouldn't have brought him back. It was cruel. And then Thane says, he called you brother, didn't he? See, this is why we have trust issues. He hates me because in another life, I was the brother he murdered. So Kirin now knows that he was Sarek, who is now Valkoroth, who was the brother of Relisvar. The family tree thickens, and then Thane moves the soul of Kirin that he's got in his hawk necklace geish into the necklace of star tears. Because the necklace is worth a kingdom, you're a good match. I had to highlight that as just something that I love. And then she quotes a line of the prophecy, "The Prince of Swords shall keep his soul in the stars." And it's a necklace of star tears that now holds a piece of Kirin's soul. I have no idea if this is what the prophecies meant, but it's just as easy not to take the chance. That whole chapter, I feel like we learn so much. We've got so much from that. I just love it. And all of my tabs are just Kirin and demon tabs. Back to Talon's story. Young Kirin has gone to a party at the Dolores house and has met Thurvashar Dolores. It was the third man. He recognised the voice. It was Thurvashar Dolores. So it was Thurvashar that told Kirin and Galen not to return because they'd be found next time. It was Thurvashar that is possibly on their side. But Thurvashar is Gadrith's son, but not Gadrith's son, because the third person, in Gadrith's words, is the Emperor's son. Kirin knew it was a lie. Gadrith wasn't Thurvashar's father at all. They have a bit of a confrontation in the library. He spots a portrait of Reveri. Thurvashar Dolores said, "She was my mother." And then Thurvashar's new slave girl comes in, Talia. But Thurvashar treats her with some respect, it seems, and is kind of protective over her. Not what you would expect of the man that we've all just been told is evil. And then they go away to a card game with Jareth Milgreast. Chapter 65, Hangover Cures. Kirin wakes up shouting, "Wait, Gadrith." They're all complaining about a hangover. Gadrith's not dead. Kirin's like, "Gadrith is not dead." Doc says, "Yes, he is. I killed him. He's definitely dead." "No, he's not dead. I've always called him Dead Man, but now I know who he is, Gadrith Dolores. I've seen him. He's not dead." His witch gift, the very first spell he ever figured out was how to rip someone's entire upper and lower soul out of their body and turn it into a Sali stone. Gadrith stole men's power and added it to his own. So Gadrith isn't dead. He's been separating his soul. His body has been killed, but he's now kind of reanimated his own corpse with what's left of his body. It's really raining, sorry if you can hear that. So Gadrith is very much not dead, or he is a reanimated corpse. His soul is still living. So he wants the Stone of Shackles. They're trying to work out what he wants. They think it's the Stone of Shackles so that he can put his soul into a living body rather than a dead one. He still exists, whether you want to call him living or soul swapped or whatever. Gadrith still exists, despite everyone thinking he was dead. And then we have some more family tree confusion around Kirin's mother, who we assume is Maya, right? Like, we think that the lie about Larillan is a lie to cover up that it's Maya. And now we see Doc telling the story of Theron showed up with Cariel. She still wore the necklace, even though she was now trapped inside the body of the woman who had murdered her, Maya. Kirin's throat tightened. What did you just say? Cariel. Queen Cariel? The Vane Queen? She's been dead for decades? Cariel's body died, sure, but her soul never made it to the afterlife. My mother. Are you certain? Of course, Maya was my mother. But wait, Queen Cariel. You're saying that Maya is Queen Cariel. Maya owned the Stone of Shackles and gave it to you when she tried to have you smuggled out of Kerr. How do you think she got it? Maya was Queen Cariel's handmaiden. She was also Queen Cariel's assassin. Queen Cariel had the Stone of Shackles, was murdered by her handmaiden, Maya, who was then geished and enslaved to Theron, who then had Kirin. But because Maya then had the Stone of Shackles, because Cariel had the Stone of Shackles, she was able to give the Stone of Shackles to Kirin, which is how Kirin got the Stone of Shackles. And then Doc does a full explanation of Varney politics and says Varney politics gets complicated, you might want to draw up a chart. And I've just put, yeah, maybe. Then we go back to what does Gadrith want? He wants to fulfill the prophecies. So he wants the Stone of Shackles, he wants to fulfill the prophecy where he thinks he can make the world a better place, whatever that is in his vision. So they discuss a plan to lure Gadrith out into the open so that Emperor Sandus can kill Gadrith. I'm sure he'd love to help us out as soon as we explain the situation. So we're back to Kieran plotting to get off Yunistani, but also to lure out Gadrith. Let's head into chapter 66. Talon's story. Kieran went to the card game with Frobisher and Jareth Malgrist and is accused of cheating. And Frobisher is proving himself to be a bit of an arse. And even as our narrator, we know he's our narrator, he says, yes, really, I did say that. But with all apologies, being an arse was the whole point. Yeah, accused him of cheating at the card game, having some sort of power over luck. And then he calls Kieran's mother a whore, and Jareth then challenges Frobisher to a duel. We find out that there is no law inside the arena, anything goes, and Frobisher basically makes Jareth look like a fool, and then Darzan is pissed at Kieran for making the family name look like a fool because you shouldn't have some distant cousin fighting your duels for you. If you want to uphold the family honour, you do it yourself. But also don't get into a fight with Frobisher, he's a fucking wizard. Don't be dumb. Kieran's story. Another 2 years has passed on Yunistani. How time does fly. Implementing Kieran's plan to escape Yunistani has taken them 2 years. Kieran confronts the old man, confronts the dragon, and he says to the dragon, what was your price for betraying your mother? Was it jealousy? Your mother was chosen to be one of the 8 and you weren't. So this is what happened with the dragons. There are 8 dragons, there are 8 immortals, there are 8 gods. The 8 dragons thought that they were going to be the gods, but instead of being turned into gods, were turned into monsters, dragons, so they used to be human. The dragon says, so you do remember. So the dragon knows that Kieran is a reborn, but Kieran does not remember. No, I admit it, but I can read a book if I stare at it long enough. There were these drawings all over the place telling the same story again and again, and it took me a little while, but I realised that the squiggly lines at the end weren't rays of energy, or a depiction of chaos, they were dragons. 8 men and women who thought they could become gods became monsters instead. Shiranico, you were a human. And the dragon is like, we only wanted to balance the inequity of power, blah 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 blah. Sounds like you had good intentions, sounds like it wasn't your fault, and then the dragon says, no, it was your fault, you. You were a naive, trusting fool, how could you believe his lies? Obviously at this point I think the dragon is talking about Sarek, not Kieran, but they're the same person. Kieran tries to convince the dragon that it's Relos Var's fault, if anyone. Relos Var created the ritual. Relos Var was the one who convinced you that they'd made a mistake when they chose 8 other people to fight the demons instead of you. It should have been you from the start. You thought you'd become a god, but Relos Var turned you into a monster. You can blame me, but he lied to me too. He used us both. You and I are alike. And then the dragon's like, we are not alike. You are Valkaroth's cornerstone. How would that even be possible, says our narrator. You are the only piece of his soul left, and when he wakes, he will reclaim you. Let me save you. In my garden, you will be spared that fate. Kieran has been learning to use his magic over these last 2 years, and performs a spell with his musical abilities to awaken the garden, free the trapped souls from the rocks in the dragon's rock garden. 36 trapped men and women died in an instant, free to return at last to the afterlife. How dare you, screamed the old man. The mountain will bury you in lava, rah, 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 rah. So then they have to trick the dragon into thinking that Kieran has died, so they kind of do a little tomfoolery. The dragon knows that Kieran is wearing the Stone of Shackles, so they make it look like Kieran has been killed by Teraith and managed to escape from the dragon, because when will a dragon stop looking for you? When it thinks you're already dead. So they make it look like he's been killed. Kieran then has a conversation with Frobisher back in Talon's POV, Talon's story, has a conversation with Frobisher, confronts him about the fact that Frobisher's the one that cheated. Frobisher's the wizard. Frobisher was the one that made Kieran win all those hands, made it look like Kieran was cheating because he wanted to challenge Kieran to a duel. All of this was to put some hate on the Demon family, and he says to Frobisher, "Why do you hate my father so much?" And Frobisher says, "I don't hate your father at all. I hold him in high regards. He was, after all, one of my father's closest friends." Kieran thinks about this and says to himself, his father is the Emperor. Oh, Sergio was a friend of the Emperor, so he doesn't think that Darzan is my father. Okay, wait, do you hate Darzan Demon? Passionately. We just have some more sorrow from Kieran for a couple of pages, wishing that Moria were alive, wishing that Sergio was still alive. He plays music to a horse. She seems to like it. The horse likes it when he plays Valathea. Then Maya takes Kieran to Theron. Theron says, "You've been avoiding me." Yes, I have. He tries to explain to Theron that Darzan is up to something, but Theron is very much like, "Don't lie to me or think that your upbringing as a minstrel's son gives you some license for creative invention. I'm not lying." Blah, 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 blah. Basically tries to explain to him about the demon summoning chamber and what Darzan's up to down there. Theron just kind of throws it all off as rumours and fancy and doesn't really believe him very much. And then we have some discussion of Frobisher being Empress Andis's son. And Theron saying, like, that doesn't make any sense. How old is Frobisher? 20? The Emperor's son would have been younger than you if he'd lived. Frobisher is too old, never mind that he looks nothing like him. What possible reason would Gadrith have had for keeping Sandus's child alive? And if he had, why would High Lord Cedric lie about it after Gadrith died? And then our narrator says, "Oh, that would be because Cedric Dolores was terrified of Gadrith." Yes, Cedric was perfectly aware of his son's continued existence. I think the High Lord hoped that if he ignored the situation, it would just go away. So the High Lord of House Dolores knows that Gadrith is alive and has just been ignoring it the whole time. Back to Kieran's story. Banter between him and Teraith. I just love it. Just some debate of why Kieran thinks that everything is his responsibility. Teraith basically saying, like, why do you think it's all up to you to save the day? Blah, blah, blah. Kieran says, this is about Galen, this is about Talia, this is about Frobisher, and of course this is about Maya. Frobisher? I don't think he should be counted. I know how someone acts when they've been gauged. I would bet you whatever price you named, Gadrith has a trinket somewhere on him that contains a sliver of Frobisher's soul. Interestingly, our narrator, Frobisher, doesn't have anything to say about that. So he is not confirming nor denying, he's ignored that. We then have some soul-y stuff, Teraith talking about who they were, well, not who they were in past lives, but what happened in past lives. So basically Kieran's whole attitude of, I will do all of this and I will try and save everyone because I can, is something he's carried with him through multiple lives. Teraith says to him, like, do you know what you said all those years ago? You showed up in the Land of Peace not too long after I did, and for 500 years, give or take, you never spoke, not a single word, not to anyone, you just stared off into nothing. Like for you, the Land of Peace was anything but, and the gods didn't expect you to volunteer. I remember the shock on their faces when you did. One of them asked why you wanted to go back, and you said, because I can. And then he discusses how that was the moment I knew. This is Teraith. Kieran says, yeah, you knew what? Knew I couldn't let you get one up on me, obviously. Not knew I was in love with you, no. Knew I couldn't let you get one up on me. You were going to make me look bad. Oh, please, tell me you didn't volunteer to be reborn because of your ego. Oh, yeah, that's me. Nothing but conceit. Plus, my wife raised her hand as soon as she saw you do it, and there was no way I was leaving the two of you alone with each other for an entire lifetime. Here, I have noted, who were they at this point? What version of themselves were they when that happened? I would be interested to know. Then we're on chapter 70, The Raven Returns. Basically, Faris spots Kieran out on the streets. Remember Faris from all that time ago when Kieran was one of the shadow dancers? Faris tries to attack Kieran and Galen. And Galen, it turns out, is badass with a sword. So, go Galen. And then they bump into Ola. She is not the luxurious woman she once was. Kieran kind of confronts her a little bit, like, why didn't you tell me? If I had known who my family was, blah, 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 blah. She says, I was doing what I thought was best for you, child. He says, that's never been your style. She's trying to better her situation. She needs to get out of the capital. She pointed a bony finger at Kieran. You could stand to come with me. You and I both know that there ain't nothing but pain for you in this city. Will you take 2? Will you take 3? Kieran says. Ola says yes. So there is a possible escape plan here. We left off on chapter 71, so allow us to continue. Chapter 71, the trip home, Kieran's story. Nothing of importance or significance happened on our ship voyage to the capital. We had good weather, nothing attacked us, so their journey back to Kur is going well. Thanks to the Brotherhood's information network, we knew that Theron was still alive, as was my mother Maya and my great-aunt Tishar. Both Thurvashar and Darzin were lamentably still around. They were disguised to get back in because they didn't want anyone to know who they were, especially Taenso, because of course we now know that she is Reveri Dolores, a convicted traitor and witch, so very well disguised. And then we finally have Kieran admitting that he knows that Theron is his father. Kieran, son of Theron, son of Pedron, the golden hair had skipped a generation, helped along by a pure-blooded Varney mother, Maya, obviously. So we now finally know who Kieran's parents are, after however long. They have snuck their way back into Kur through their disguises, and then the other bit I've highlighted in this chapter is they all knew. Corin Milgreast, Emperor Sandus, Doc, if I'd gotten to know him when he was still here. Emperor Sandus once told me he considered my father a good friend. He wasn't talking about Serja. No, he was talking about Theron, because now everyone knows that Theron is your dad. And then we're back to Talon's story at the New Year Festival. Galen and Kieran are going to the New Year Festival. This is where Kieran has to perform with Valathea. We meet a new character, Shaloran de Talis, who is dressed up in some sort of like Jorat costume, so it makes Kieran think of the Jorat girl of his dreams. But it is just Shaloran de Talis, who becomes important later on. And then he plays Valathea and is fantastic about it, and is then approached by one of the voices of the Council of Voices, Carawan, yes, who mentions to Kieran about the prophecies. He takes a bit of an interest in Kieran, and Maya's like, stop that, go away. But he mentions a set of prophecies, as if we didn't already know that. The prophecies foretell the end of the world, ushered in by a herald called Warchild, or the Hell Warrior, or Demon King, or Godslayer, the Endbringer who will usher in the annihilation of our world. Kieran didn't want to mention that Zaltaroth had once called him by one of those very titles, the Thief of Souls. That's what it is, the Thief of Souls, because Maya says firmly, your precious Thief of Souls died when Gadrith Dolores died. He was your Thief of Souls. Leave Kieran alone. Kieran, at this point, I think, realises that he might not be. And then he sees that Carawan has the intaglio carved ruby ring that he also knew that Serja had. So the secret group grows, and this particular person on the Council of Voices has one as well. We're then back to Kieran's modern day story. He goes to see Jareth, and he sees a poster in Jareth's room about the death of someone from Jorat called the Black Knight, who was wanted by Arjun Kane, the Duke of Yor, who is connected to Relos Var. So Kieran notes, anyone who Relos Var's puppet Kane wanted dead that badly instantly marched to the top of my interesting people list. So he nabs that. So I think the Black Knight is going to become interesting to us at a point. Jareth asks him what he's been up to, and he says, oh, you know, the usual: kidnapped, sold into slavery, kept a prisoner by a dragon, same old stuff, kind of plays it off as a joke. And then he kind of exposes everything to Jareth and says, Thurvashar is not Reveri's son, she's not dead, I know where she is, your father helped her escape her continuance, she did not have a child, it is all a lie. Here's a bunch of letters that prove what I'm saying, and one of them is from your uncle, Nikali, who we know is Doc. And one of these letters also confirms that neither Emperor Sandus's son nor wife ever actually died, as confirmed by a High Priestess of Fane herself. Thurvashar is Emperor Sandus's son, and if I'm right, Thurvashar is both Geist and half Vordreth. And our narrator, Thurvashar, Pretty much says, Gadrith originally kept me for ritual purposes and then decided I would make an excellent host body once he'd obtained the Stone of Shackles. So we know what Gadrith's plan was. So after all of this, Jareth asks what he wants, and basically he says, I want you to run those tests to prove that I'm right about Fervishar. Jareth is like, yep, sure. Back to Talon's story. After the New Year's party, Valathea the harp is being stolen. Valathea is being stolen by Carawan and his magical group of people. They are taking her away, and then he is summoned away as his mother has been poisoned. Kieran was at a loss. Who did this man mean? Ola? Then he realised they had to mean his stepmother, Alshanae. She had been poisoned, but Alshanae is already dead, so it was Talon. So, what distraction is this what is the purpose of this distraction? She had been poisoned, her body had been taken away, and Darzan is pissed at Galen for being sad about it. Then we have a little heart-to-heart between Galen and Kieran, where he admits that he doesn't like girls. He's not into girls. He's not like that. And Kieran's like, I know, I could tell. Galen thinks that it makes him weak because his father thinks it makes him weak, and Kieran is just adorable. It's an excuse for gossip, and after that, nobody cares. Then Kieran invites Galen to run away with him. End of chapter 74. Chapter 75, Kieran's story. They meet up with the Emperor to discuss their plan. So they meet up with the Emperor in secret. He gives them rings. He set down 3 rings on the table. Each of you takes one of these. They're enchanted. Focus on them and you'll be able to communicate with me directly. It was a set with an intaglio carved ruby. The rings! Now we know where all of the rings are connected. This group of people with the rings are all connected to the Emperor. Interesting information. I thought about the Varney who Gadrith and Darzan had tortured, who had owned such a ring. I thought about my father, Serja, who owned such a ring. I thought about Carawan, who had stolen Valathea from me and owned such a ring. Kieran then returns to the Damon household. And everyone is shocked. Maya's very happy about it. He gets into a fight with Darzan. They get into like a proper fight, swords drawn and all, but Maya is gauged and is obligated to stop harm from coming to a Damon, so she has to intervene. Kieran calls Darzan Big Brother. He's like, Big Brother? Our father actually told you the truth. I'm amazed he had the spine. I figured things out. So he's now admitted in front of Darzan and Theron that he knows that Theron is his father. Theron made no move to chase. What's going on here? Kieran, you have a lot of explaining to do. Theron, don't you think you have a lot of explaining to do? Because I do. He tries to deny it, that he's not his father. Darzan's your father. No. Kieran then explains he's been given the Startir necklace that obviously is now his Geish. We know this from before. You remember where these Startirs ended up after you brought Maya with them, a certain old Varney hag who just happens to be a high priestess of Thane. Take my word for it that I know for a fact that Gadrith didn't travel past the Second Veil. He found a way to fool you and Thane both. Lorellan was murdered by a mimic while she was wearing the Stone of Shackles. Your former handmaiden never left the house, but she did switch allegiance. She works for Darzan now. He's exposing everything. Everything's going on. They say Ola's here, and he says, no, Ola Nethera is in the Land of Peace. I heard that straight from Thane's mouth, which means the Ola you have is a counterfeit. There's your mimic that works for Darzan. And then they have a discussion about knowing that Maya is my mother, knowing that you are my father, and him and Theron get into a little fisticuffs match there. And then he goes off to try and kill a mimic. And modern day Kieran telling the story at this point says, I don't know where it all went wrong. I went to Ola's room alone. Betrayal, chapter 76, Talon's story. Bear with me, love, we're almost finished, at least finished as my story can be. They try to escape from the Blue Palace. They meet up with Fervishar because he wants to take Talia with him as well. I know you're not a fan of Darzan Damon. I know that you and he and a third man are plotting something together. Battery died. You're the one that was listening at the door. You're the one that warned us away, Kieran says to Fervishar. He wants to take Talia, and he basically says to Fervishar, like, I'll pay for her. You won't be at any loss. I'll take her. And then he says, I'll take your necklace instead, which is obviously the Stone of Shackles. He says, you have no idea what you wear around your neck. He was trying to get the Stone of Shackles from Kieran way before, because he knew that's what Gadrith wanted, I suppose. They had some wine. They had some wine that was served to them by Ola. And Galen had some wine and collapsed. Kieran gasped, looking up at Ola. I'm so sorry, Bright Eyes. He'd have noticed if I hadn't drugged everyone's wine. Derbyshire yelled, trickery. So Ola drugged everyone, Talia included. So Talia collapsed in a heap. Talia's eyes opened, although to be fair, it would be more correct to say Talon's eyes opened. Talia is now Talon. So Talia's dead too? What? Or Talon was pretending to be Talia to get Kieran's attention. Things to consider. Things to consider. This is where it appears that Talon may have switched sides or something. I mean, this chapter is called Betrayal, but betrayal of who? Talon reached down to touch Kieran's face. Ducky, your father Serja and I have been talking, because obviously Serja is in her because she's killed and eaten him. You know, he's the one who started all of this, giving you to Ola, making sure you learnt certain skills. He wasn't behind the job at the Kazavar house where you first saw Darzin. If I had to put metal on it, I'd blame the goddess of luck for that. But he works for Empress Andis, and he's brought me around to his way of thinking. We've decided this is for the best. I know it won't be pleasant, but sending one's child away for school never is. Trust us, it will hurt us a lot more than it hurt you. Although, to be fair, it'll hurt you rather a lot. Trying to be super quick now because these batteries keep dying on me. The griffin must fly, Talon says, and then she headed for the slave ship. So we've come full circle to where Kieran is about to become for sale again, and where our story begins. Back to Kieran's story. I suppose it's just my turn now, isn't it, Talon? Let's see how this ends. He finds Galen again at the Demon house. Galen says, you abandoned me. Is that not the case? You abandoned me, that's how it looks like. And he says, no. Do you want to hear how slave masters whipped me? Blah, 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 blah. Galen says, do you want to compare injuries? Do you want me to feel sorry for you? Like, yeah, you've suffered, but so have I. My father's been beating me all these years and you just abandoned me. He doesn't think everything should be a contest, though. Anyway, whilst they're having this discussion, they hear screams. They go out to face the screams and realise that those guards are dead. Dead, do you understand? But they're still moving. That's dead man's worth. Would have used the name Gadrith, but it would have confused Galen. Gadrith Dolores stood at the end of the hallway. Gadrith has arrived. Kieran is shocked because how did he get here so quickly? How did this happen so soon? What has happened? Gadrith controls Thurvashar, obviously through his Gaish, to bring all the family together, all the Demon family together. And we also now see that Shaloran Detalis is also now part of the Demon family and is dressed in blue because she married Galen. How cute. But Galen doesn't like girls, which is very sad. So, you know, a royal political marriage between Shaloran and Galen. But they're married now. She's part of the fam. Told you she'd be important. Gadrith starts murdering the Demons in front of Kieran because he wants the Stone of Shackles from Kieran. He takes Bavrin first, sets a delicate crystal on the black velvet cloth, a Sali stone. Kieran remembered what Tyenso had said about Gadrith's witch gift. He could pull someone's soul out of their body and add its power to his own. This is what he's about to start doing to the Demons. He does it to Bavrin first, one of Kieran's brothers. He then does it to Aunt Tishar. I watched as that bastard pulled Tishar's soul from her body. She made a beautiful blue stone. Of course she did. So, heartbreaking. Tishar has just been murdered and turned into a stone and taken for Gadrith's own power. Kieran tries to bluff and say there's no one here you could kill that would hurt me. You can kill them all. I'm never giving you what you want. Until Gadrith asks Thurvashar, is he telling the truth about his loved ones? Is there no one here whose death would touch him? Thurvashar flinched as if that were one question in all the world he had hoped Gadrith would not ask. Our narrator comments, pretty much true. I couldn't lie, you see. Because he's gaished. Thurvashar pointed at Lady Maya. They want to take Maya to turn her into a stone as well. Gadrith says, I will count to 3. I pulled the Stone of Shackles off my neck. It was easy this time. I held it out to Gadrith. It's yours. He quite simply will not sacrifice his mother for this. Gadrith put his hand to his neck and smiled. It's everything I've always wanted. And that's the end of my story. I lost, you won. We all know what happens next. And that is where Kieran ends his story. He has given the Stone of Shackles to Gadrith. Gadrith's got what he wanted. The time has come. Here's our final rundown. Chapter 78, The Lighthouse at Shadragor. An important location to remember. Talon decides she's going to finish off Kieran's story because I started all of this, it's only fair I finish it. Kieran is being taken away by Frobisher and Talon, who looked like Talia, although more accurately she looked like Moria. So as I said, like, Moria, where is Talia? And then we ask, where is Talia? Safe and a long way from you. Talon tells her she's been pretending to be the High Lord. Talon then convinces Frobisher that she should be Kieran's jailer. Because he needs to go back to Gadrith to perform the little spells. So we're almost at, like, modern day at this point. We also have some more information to just back up that Frobisher is actually a good guy, because he mentions only telling things to Gadrith if he asked, because he's under a geis. We discover that Frobisher knew about the involvement of Jadeyraereads and Tyenso anyway. For what it's worth, I'm really sorry it worked out this way, you were never going to succeed, blah blah blah. And then they discover that Jadeyraereads is outside of time, which is why it was used as a jail for Kieran, and again, becomes important again later. Frobisher says to Kieran, like, it won't take long for your friends to conclude that something is wrong, but by the time they realise their plan has gone awry, several weeks will have passed here and you will already be dead. And that is the end of Talon's story. Thanks for the rock, Ducky. I'll keep it safe. And then we move to present day. So this is then the telling of the story from Frobisher. He has a little insight. Basically, Frobisher, an aside, just commenting on Kieran's choices, but then again, this is not his story. This is Kieran's. Kieran paused after he'd finished telling his story to the mimic. Juval had described my cellar as someone who looked like Faris. I never doubted it was him. But it was you, wasn't it? Yep. It's not too much to expect a little gratitude from my own son. I'm not your son. You were Serja and Ola's son, and they are me. It's close enough. So she's got Serja and Ola in her, as we know. So she's got those souls, those beings, those memories. Kieran lunged at her, but the bars blocked his progress. I was geished because of you. Shh, Talon said. Quiet. Let's leave that as a surprise for the others. At this point, he's geished. We know he's geished. His soul isn't whole. How are they going to offer his soul to a demon if he doesn't have all of it? Talon is a crafty, in her words, what she called Kieran at the beginning, a crafty cunt. You remember Zaltaroth, don't you? So Talon offers up Kieran to Darzin. She takes his star tier necklace and says, I was hoping you'd let me eat him, but since that's not going to happen, I'll settle for treasure, and takes his necklace, and Darzin's just like, okay, whatever. Talon gives the stone containing the story to Frobisher. Frobisher caught the stone and looked at it. What's this? Just a keepsake to remember him by. So this is how Frobisher came into possession of the stone, and how Talon came into possession of the necklace. And then they summon Zaltaroth. Zaltaroth comes in. Zaltaroth is ready for the sacrifice. Zaltaroth tries to almost seduce Kieran, becomes this female figure. Hey, handsome, did you miss me? And morphs into the figure of the dream Jorak girl. And Kieran made a noise that might have been a whimper. No, not even for her. I said he's not willing to sacrifice. But his unhappiness with the whole thing makes Zaltaroth want the sacrifice even more. Zaltaroth is perfect. Give me all of him, heart and soul, and I will do as you ask of me. Darzin smiled. With pleasure. They can't give Zaltaroth all of him, heart and soul, because all of his soul isn't there. We're then back with Jadeyraereads and Tyenso, who realise that something has gone wrong. They can smell necromancy. They know that something has gone wrong. They head back to the Blue Palace and find the Demon family, or what's left of them at this point. Theron Tyenso said, what's happened here? Where are your guards? Dead, mostly. Theron tries to send Tyenso again. We've been attacked. The Emperor's here. I suggest you find shelter until all this is over. I can't help but notice you're not moving. Tyenso says, funny, I can't help but notice you're not Theron. Talon narrowed her eyes. Talon's pretending to be a High Lord. This is where Talon tells them that Kieran is dead. He very much is, I'm afraid, but there's good news. I think Darzin will still let me eat the body. Hey, you might still have your chance to get into Kieran's pants after all, she says to Jadeyraereads, because that's all he wants. Talon and Jadeyraereads then have a fight. There is action. there is illusion from Jadeyraereads. She thinks that she's got the upper hand, rips to shreds the Vane, who is an illusion, as Jadeyraereads stabs a large silver spike into her body. Kieran knew you were here. He's known for years. It gave us a great deal of time to prepare for how he would deal with you. He reached down into the crawling mess of flesh and pulled back a necklace of star-tier diamonds. He stared at the jewels with dread in his expression, because this is how he knows that she has had Kieran, and Kieran is gone because she has got the diamonds. They then actually meet the real Theron as they get past Talon trying to stop them from doing so. Theron blinks at Tienzo. Reveri Dolores, what are you doing here? Plotting to kill my husband for a second time. And then they wake Maya as well. And Maya's main concern is, where is Kieran? What is happening to Kieran? What's happened? Was that Gadrith? What's happened to Kieran? And Galen explains to Maya, they've taken him. They're going to kill him. They threatened to kill you. He couldn't stand for it, so they've taken him. He gave them the Sally Stone that they wanted, and then Maya explains he wore the Kirpus Stone of Shackles, and Galen says they took him. They said they needed him to summon a demon. So they now know that not only has Gadrith got Kieran, but he's also got the Stone of Shackles as well. They go down to the demon summoning place that obviously Galen knew of and find Kieran's body. He's dead. Kieran is a dead man. But Jadeyraereads, with the Star-Tier necklace that they know is his Geish and holds part of his souls, thinks that they can put him back together. He was Geished while he was a slave, this contains his Geish, and then that makes them clock on to the fact that they've summoned a demon with him. They've sacrificed his soul to a demon, but his soul is not whole, so Zaltaroth is not under their control. And then our narrator also says, it was never going to work anyway. I suspect Kieran had not been whole for centuries. Zaltaroth had named a price they could never pay. It was all just a trick from a demon to get his way. They take Kieran's body to a priest with the Star-Tier necklace, and Theron says, he is my son, he is my only son. And then they try to bring Kieran back. Then we go back to Kieran's perspective of his life in the afterlife. So he's in the afterlife, he's in the Borderlands, he's battling demons, he is remembering things. He sees a dragon rise from a lake. There is a demon who is helping him battle off other demons. Like, he thought this demon was attacking him, but it wasn't, it was helping him. So these demons work together to take down this dragon that has risen from the lake. And as this happens, the sensation added to the constant pain of his missing heart, and with it came a different pain, the return of memory. Every memory of every lifetime. So in the afterlife, Kieran now has remembered everything from his previous lives. He knows exactly what's going on. The dragon lifted its clawed hands to clear the obstruction from its mouth, but it was too late. Light, the bright yellow light of a sun that had not been seen in the living world for thousands of years, and in this place never, glowed hot and brilliant between its teeth. Liquid starfire dissolved the surrounding flesh through gashes that opened in the dragon's skin. And then he looks closer at the demon that has been helping him. Her skin was red and her hair was a single black-red stripe across her head. If her eyes were open, he knew they would be all the colours of the Forge. He recognised her. He knew her. What a sick joke Zaltaroth had played on him. Alane? He put his head in his hands and wept. So he now thinks that this person is Alane, the one who freed him in his previous life, freed his soul from the prison that he was trapped in, allowing him to be reborn again. Then we're back in the land of the living, where Zaltaroth is having a grand old time with this Hell March and is just causing havoc. Until the Emperor arrives and tries to convince the demon to leave. But the demon is backed up by Gadrith. And Gadrith comes out, and Gadrith says, like, who are you going to deal with first? Me or the demon? What are you going to do? Gadrith's being all, evil. And the Emperor killed Gadrith. But Gadrith has the Stone of Shackles. So the Emperor has killed Gadrith, meaning that the Emperor has killed himself, and Gadrith's soul is now in the Emperor's body. Gadrith lives on. Emperor Sandus is sadly no longer with us. We're then back with Tienzo's perspective for a little bit. and she clocks on to what the Emperor has now done, because they think that they've just witnessed Emperor Sandus kill Gadrith, but Taenso clocks on to no, because he's took the Stone of Shackles. Sandus is dead, Gadrith is very much alive. You and the others need to stop Zaltarath. I'll take care of my husband, she says. Now we're back in the afterlife again, and our chapter is called Zaltarath's Daughter. So Kirin and this woman are chatting away in the afterlife. He has saved her. Kirin, in the afterlife, being attacked by demons after killing this dragon, he is trying to protect this other demon that has been helping him from the other demons that are trying to attack, and whilst he's doing this, she awakes. She began her slaughter, so she slaughters all the demons around her, leaving Kirin and her. She is startled by this interaction with Kirin and is very much like, why? What? I thought that dragon had finished me. He says, Zalame. That's Zalame. She's dead for a while. Like, oh, you know her name? Who did you think named her? That's not possible. Still, it's the truth. Blah, blah, blah. So Kirin is speaking with the knowledge of his past lives, so it's quite confusing as a reader at this point. She says to him, you attacked me, then you healed me, and then you left me here for that pack of demons before you rescued me again. Are you this indecisive? I suppose that depends on who you ask. Didn't think they would hurt you. They're demons. So are you. Being their enemy does not make me your friend. So he's building a little back and forth with this strange demon girl. Now we're back in the land of the living, very much back and forth at the end here. Gadrith is now living in Emperor Sandus's body. Taenso is going to face Gadrith. She's going to deal with her husband once and for all. Gadrith makes the comment to Thurvashar, oh, you actually are my son now, how interesting, ha ha ha. Very funny. Gadrith and Taenso have a magical battle. There is ice and lightning and fire and all sorts, and they really try and take it out of each other, but in the end, Gadrith wins. Taenso is dead. Taenso has been killed by her father/husband, which is still incredibly bizarre. But Taenso had some very smart magical moves up her sleeve, just wasn't strong enough to beat Gadrith. Then we're back in Kirin's POV in the afterlife. He is noting changes in the surroundings of the Borderlands, Death's Front. She says to him, you've been here before. He says, everyone's been here before. Most of us just don't remember after we're reborn. So interesting again, Kirin's got his memories of his previous lives. Then Lady Demon explains that she's only in the afterlife when she's asleep. She is actually alive in the land of the living, but when she sleeps, she crosses through the second veil into the land of the dead. But when she wakes, she will cross back and wake up in the living world once more. He calls her Alane again, and she says, my name is not Alane, and I dislike the way that you look at me. Kirin apologizes and says, Alane is the name I knew you by a long time ago. She says, it's never been my name. She's also asked him the price of the healing that he has performed on her. He says, there is no price for your healing. Your healing was payment. Your injury was my mistake. Blah, 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 blah. How? Such an injury, that was a dragon. I should have been destroyed. You're not a god. If you were, you would not be Geish. You would not be missing your heart. Except you're not missing it now. How is it that you are healed? And then he explains. Since I was missing a heart, I needed a replacement, so I used Zalame's heart. The dragon that they've just beaten. You what? It would never work in the living realm, but reality here is malleable, and I don't know what the effect will have. As far as I know, it's never been done before. So it was the Dragon of Souls, slain in the realm of death. I didn't know what else to do, and he used it on her too. So she is outraged. You split a dragon's heart between us. A dragon, a monster of chaos and evil. There is no way the presence of a dragon's heart will not taint my aura. So she's trying to kind of blend in the land of the dead with all of the demons, because she's, what, living, dead, in between, demon, who knows? And then Kirin mentions knowing Zaltaroth, and she is mad about this. How do you know Zaltaroth? He showed me you. Zaltaroth once found me on the streets of the capital city. He showed me unpleasant things, but he showed me a woman I could never hurt. He showed me you. Me. She showed you me. Why? I don't know, so I would trust you? So I would never trust you? I think he's trying to fulfill a prophecy, but I don't know if the point was to bring us together or keep us apart. She rolled her eyes. I am sick to death of prophecies. We're agreed on that. I too am sick to death of prophecies for you, my friends. Then they discuss the sex of Zaltaroth. Is Zaltaroth male or female? Zaltaroth is a demon. She is whatever gender amuses her. She's been female when I've met her. So we know that Zaltaroth is genderless, really. Kieran then kind of runs through his plan with this woman, mentions Gadrith. She says, Gadrith, minion of Relos Var? He says, don't tell Gadrith that. I'm sure he doesn't think he's a minion of Relos Var. She scoffed. Relos Var excels at pulling the strings on all manner of puppets, even those who hate him. Yes, he does. She then asks him who Alane is, a wife, a lover. No, she was the one who saved me. I was dead, I was trapped, and Alane freed me. I guess I never have a good time for running into you. She then says, you must let that person go. She doesn't exist. I'm not Alane. And then she tells us her name is Janelle Theranon. And that is an important name, friends. Zaltaroth starting a Hell March, back in the land of the living. As Kieran escapes the land of the dead, he sat up, gasping for breath. Took you long enough. What did you do? Stop to pick flowers? Terath says. And then he says that he doesn't remember anything from his time in the afterlife, so he doesn't remember meeting Janelle at all. Terath explains, you were sacrificed to Zaltaroth, but since Zaltaroth didn't receive your entire soul, he's not technically under anyone's control. So Zaltaroth is starting a Hell March. Is Tyenso strong enough to kill him? So they think Tyenso is battling Gadrith. And then we also see Jareth's body, who is soul dead, killed by a demon. Poor Jareth. And then they witness the magic coming from the culling fields, which is where Tyenso and Gadrith are having their fight. Did you see that? The magic coming from the culling fields. They try to rush off towards the culling fields, but on their way, Darzin pops up, because of course Darzin does. That's what Darzin does best. Kieran and Darzin finally have their fight. Darzin is so full of himself and thinks that he can take Kieran because he doesn't know how much training Kieran's been through since they last spoke. Fighty, fighty, fighty. Darzin's head and several of his fingers tumbled onto the grass. Goodbye, Darzin. But Thurvashar is still a threat because he's under a Geish control. So Thurvashar is trying to kill Terath at this point. Kieran held up his sword as he moved back to confront Thurvashar. You're Geished. If only I could answer. Notice how I didn't ask? Yes, that is probably for the best. So we have confirmation of Thurvashar's Geish. As they've had this interaction, Gadrith comes towards them. Gadrith comes forward. Kieran says, I assume you killed Tyenso. I almost regret I had to slay her. Really? No, I was being polite. Then we discover Gadrith's true purpose. He wants to get a Thainriel, and he needed to be Emperor, not because this was some sort of coup. It's a burglary. He wanted a Thainriel. Gadrith orders Thurvashar, kill him. I have a sword to find, and then many gods to slay. So Gadrith wants to be the god slayer. Kieran gets into a fight with Thurvashar, picks up a rusty old blade off the floor of the culling fields, and the blade starts to sing to him. He was holding something to which he was connected, something that was once part of him, once whole and now separate. You unbelievably lucky bastard, Thurvashar told him. Yes, I am. Gadrith is called back, and we now know that Kieran holds a Thainriel, God Slayer, the ruin of kings. Impossible, Gadrith said. I am the thief of souls. I am the king of demons. I killed the emperor. I will free the demons. It is my destiny to remake the world. Me. Or is it Kieran? Because isn't Kieran about to do all of that? Kieran is about to have a fight with Gadrith. But Gadrith is not the real target. He holds Godslayer. He holds a sword with the power to slay magic. So, when trying to kill Gadrith, what he's really aiming for is the Stone of Shackles, because if he can break the Stone of Shackles first with a sword that can break through magic, then he can kill Gadrith. So, Thainriel first shattered the Stone of Shackles into tiny blue shards, and then dove forward, slicing into Gadrith's chest and impaling his heart. Gadrith twisted, briefly the Emperor of Kerr, was dead. Whoop whoop. With the Stone of Shackles breaking, the geishas are now all gone. Chapter 88, Maya's Gift. Theron, the geisha's gone. The geisha's gone. I can breathe. After so long, I can draw breath. Lady Maya, Galen crossed over to her. Maya didn't look at him with the blank indifference he expected. No, this stare held malice. That is not my name. Galen Damon fell to the ground dead. I have never been Maya. The real Maya died before you ever met me. So who are you? Cariel, she smiled as Theron's eyes widened. Cariel, queen of all the Varney, daughter of Kevats, queen of the Manor Varney, daughter of Comesra of the Eight Guardians. There's then a whole footnote about relations, and it literally ends with, yes, it's complicated, which it is. So I, again, encourage you to look at the the family tree at the back to kind of make sense of who's related to who here, because as Fervashar tells us, it is complicated. But we now know who Maya really is. She's Cariel. She says to Theron, do you know that you are the grandson of usurped King Terendel of the Kirpus Varney? It's true, your father, Pedron's... He was not my father. Yes, he was. We both know it. Your Varney blood betrays your lineage. For Pedron's mother was Princess of Alrashar, King Terendel's daughter. She was gaished and sold to the Demons by my father, King Kelendel. My father usurped the Kirpus Varney crown. So your father, Pedron, and your aunt Tashar were by all rights the true rulers of the Kirpus Varney. You are now heir to a throne that seemed so distant that no one could have imagined you would claim it. Leave them behind, leave your human shackles behind, Theron, shed them, and join me. I shall free you of the Demons. She takes control of Theron's body, drags him away from the Demon family that she is seemingly just killing in front of him. The former queen of the Varney opened a portal and ushered them both through. Dun dun dun! Chapter 89. The geishas have gone, which means Fervashar's geish has also gone. Kieran apologises for killing his father, and he says, you killed my father's murderer, for that I am in your debt. Fervashar assesses the situation. You've killed the Emperor. No, I've killed Gadrith, who killed the Emperor. No, but therefore Gadrith was the Emperor. You've just killed the Emperor. You need to get away. All the 8 artifact cornerstones have a sympathetic relationship to the element to which they are attuned. The Stone of Shackles is connected to Geish. Someone has freed the demons, just as prophecy predicted, but it wasn't Gadrith or Cain. It was Kieran, because the demons are connected to the geishas, and with the power of Geish gone, the control over the demons is gone as well. So the demons are free. No one has to know it was you that held the Ruin of Kings. You've just become a threat to the Empire. So there is need for Kieran to run away. So that's what he's going to try and do. What about Taenso? She'll come back, won't she? Fane will bring her back. I don't know. Where are you going to go, Terath asked Kieran. Jorat, I hear there's a knight there who's causing some trouble. I'm going to find him, which is the Black Knight that we heard about way back when. Then we're back in the Cullingfields, where there is about to be a new emperor. Like, nothing can be living in the Cullingfields before the battle for the crown begins. However, when that was about to begin, Taenso wasn't living. She was dead. Taenso, once called Reveri, inhaled deeply and arched her back to suck in more sweet air as she returned. She was still not entirely aware where she was or what had occurred around her. She lay in a field at the centre of the arena, looking up at a soap bubble field of magical energy, while the rain sprinkled on her face. Above her head, directly above her, a glowing circle of light bisected by a white line floated. Taenso began to laugh. No living thing could stay inside the arena after the Emperor's death, but Taenso had, at that singular perfect moment, not been alive, so her body hadn't moved. She reached up with both hands to claim the crown and sceptre of Kur. Taenso is Empress. And then we have final notes, chapter 90 from Fervashar. So, he says, Empress Taenso. We now know that at the beginning, when he is writing his initial letter, when he says, Your Majesty, who is that to? Empress Taenso. A few notes are in order to wrap up this account. The death toll, 5,000 people died. Zaltaroth was banished by Corin Milagreast, Theron Damon and Theron's slave, Maya. Corin returned to the Citadel, and it was assumed Thérindamon and Lady Maya returned to the Blue Palace. However, this is the last time anyone can document seeing High Lord Thérindamon or Lady Maya. Just a short time after the main part of the fighting ended, a Physica discovered the site of the Damon massacre. It had claimed almost all remaining Damon members. We assume it was the work of Maya, freed of the Geash and become Cariel, Queen in exile once more. She must have retaliated against the family who had kept her imprisoned. Kirin Damon's location is uncertain too. The last anyone saw, he left the north gates of the city with several Damon riding horses, Ojorati's groom, and a grey Jorat Fireblood. Athainriel is now loose again in the world. No demon may safely be summoned, lest they run amok, which means no slave may be gaished. People are saying it's the end of the world. My Empress, we know it is just the beginning. And that is everything that happens in The Ruin of Kings by Jenn Lyons. I am very happy with how my reread of this has gone. I hope you have enjoyed running through the whole thing with me, because I have certainly enjoyed reading it, annotating it, tabbing it. Just look at those tabs. That is so satisfying. And now I have the pleasure of running through the whole thing again, because although I've just read it, annotated it, vlogged the whole thing to let you know everything that happens, I now have to edit this vlog. So, thank you if you've watched it up until this point. I hope it is the rundown that you needed before you head into The Name of All Things, because that's where I'm going to be heading very soon. I will be doing another one of these for The Name of All Things if you ever find yourself in need of a recap of that as well, but hopefully it has filled those knowledge holes for you if you had any. Or if you were just watching this for fun, I hope you had a good time. But yeah, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in whatever comes next. Bye!